Our meeting, April 5th, 2011, Falls Township Board of Supervisors, with a salute to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Pullen, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Zepka?
Here.
Mrs. Slosky? Mr. Harvey?
Here.
Mr. Dent?
Here.
Mr. Snipes?
Here.
All right, thank you very much. Before we get to our agenda, we are graced with the presence of a longtime staple here in Bucks County, the Men of Harmony. And I'm going to introduce Mr. Bob Thompson, who's the president of that organization, for a few comments.
Good evening. My name is Bob Thompson, president of the Men of Harmony. We are a male singing group formerly known as the United States Steel Chorus. Currently, we have 8 former steel workers in the chorus. The United States Steel Chorus began in 1950 with the construction of the Fairless Works U.S. Steel facility in Falls Township. The construction will continue through the Christmas season. Some men boarded a flatbed truck and caroled throughout the construction site. 60 years later, the tradition continues. On a personal note, my dad, Jack Thompson, was director of the tour of the steel mill, hospitals, and schools for many years, and we caroled in Charles Dickens outfits. Today, the Men of Harmony perform throughout the year attired in our tuxedos. Our chorus is under the able direction of Mr. Barry Van Acker, who was a former music teacher and supervisor in Pennsbury School District. We are grateful to the Falls Township Supervisors for this opportunity to sing for you and to promote our 60th anniversary concert memories to be held at Commonwealth Egan Catholic High School in the auditorium on April 30th, 2011 at 3:00 p.m. The ticket price is $10, free for children under the age of 12. We invite you to attend for a delightful afternoon of musical entertainment. Without further ado, I am pleased to present the Men of Harmony, Working on the Railroad. Thank you.
Working, I've been working on the railroad, working. I've been working all day now, working. I've been working on the railroad, working. I've been working all day now, working. I've been working on the railroad, working. To pass the time I'm working. Rise up so early in the morning. Hear it, you hear the captain shouting, Dinah, blow your horn. Dinah, won't you, Dinah, Dinah, won't you, Dinah, Dinah, won't you, Dinah, blow your horn now. Dinah, won't you, Dinah, Dinah, won't you, Dinah, Dinah, blow your horn. Singing now, someone is in the kitchen now. Someone I know, someone with Dinah, strumming on the old banjo. Hear the rhythm now, beat, beat, 5-5, fiddly-I-O. I sing it, beat, beat, 5-5, fiddly-I-O. Sing it, beat, beat, 5-5, fiddly-I-O. Strumming on the old banjo. 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 A 3-5 Billy-I-O. Soft ebb and flow, waves gently falling. A breeze comes from the paling west, and drowsy wings are homeward flitting for weary nations to rest, for weary nations soft ebb and flow, the shadows deepen, and whippoorwills sound far away. Down by the margin, slowly bending, the blossoms droop their heads to pray. The blossoms droop their heads to pray. Soft ebb and flow, fall moonbeams gently, bright stars in benedictions drop. O heart of mine, God's in His heaven, thou to my love shalt rest awhile. Thou to my love shalt rest awhile.
We've used Let There Be Peace on Earth as our closing theme since the middle 60s, and we will do that here also. It's one of those we do with our eyes closed sometimes.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on
Good to see you.
You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true on the red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or brag. But should all acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the grand high-flying flag. Keep your eye on the grand old flag.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate you being here and obviously in all the work that you've done with looking at the group we have here. It looks like some of you have been singing just probably for a couple of years now, I'm guessing. Not too long, right? Another 50 years, some of you can... Oh, who's that?
John Mueller hit 90.
Oh, good for you. Congratulations. No, I thank you.
This is my 80-year-old club.
All
right, here's my 80-year-old club.
oh, go ahead.
Pete, Vince isn't here. Where's my other guy?
John sitting down.
You guys aren't as old as I am. Oh, no, they're not. And I came to get a hug from you. I remember when the U.S. Steel Corps first started, so many of them were with that group.
Oh, well.
Oh, Bobby Tom.
I also see my good friend John Sanderlin, who I've known for 40 years, been singing in my church. I had no idea you were even a member, John.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you
so
very much, gentlemen. Thank you. And we'll be announcing again, sort of at the end of the meeting, the date and time and location of the concert. And we will, at our next meeting, be also approving a proclamation for the Men of Harmony. So thank you again very much, gentlemen, and appreciate wonderful performance. Thank you. And good luck.
Barry, we have another birthday. Fairless Hills is 60 years old this year. 60 years. You were a pioneer.
Okay, we'll move into item number 1 of our agenda, which is 74 Jennifer Lane preliminary land development. Mr. Gray?
Yes, as mentioned, this is for 74 Jennifer Lane preliminary land development, tax map parcel number 13-33-112. Representing the applicant tonight is Mr. Douglas Maloney.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Maloney.
Thank you. This will not be quite as melodic as the last presentation, but we'll try to make it as entertaining as possible. I represent Bob Manzo, who's the owner of Jukafa LLC, the owner of the property. The only reason we're here, this is a single-family dwelling, and you don't normally see that in land development because it's really not land development. The only reason we're here is because when this subdivision was approved, the Penn's Place subdivision, it was actually approved twice, once in 1987 and once in 1995. I think that there was some sort of a survey problem, and so it was reapproved 8 years later. When it was approved, there was a restriction, a note put on the plan saying that provided that all buildings had to be set back at least 20 feet from the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain limit. That was fine for all of the other lots except this one. This one, based on the configuration of it, it's a triangular-shaped piece, and given the 20-foot setback from Jennifer Lane, it greatly restricts the width or the depth of the house. The depth of the house will be something like 15 feet if we were to comply with that. Wouldn't be at all in character with the surrounding neighborhood, which is a neighborhood of really nice houses, if you've been back in the Penn's Place subdivision. So we're seeking relief from that because otherwise we would end up with either an extremely small or an extremely oddly shaped house. So that's all we're here for, is to get relief from that note on the plan. And in discussing it with the township staff, the suggestion was file a new land development plan and come forward so that this can be approved for the development of this parcel without that note on it. And we included a note on this plan noting that we're trying to get out of relief from the note on the previous subdivision plan. And that's the only thing that brings us here. In reviewing this, Mr. Sullivan has pointed out in his review letter that we would need a waiver. If this was land development, we would need a waiver. Frankly, I think legally we don't need a waiver because this technically isn't land development. We're only here because of that note issue. However, since this subdivision was approved in the 2000s, the Board of Supervisors approved a new subdivision ordinance, and that has a wetland margin requirement. The wetland margin is 100 feet from the boundary of the wetlands. This entire property is within that wetland margin. But just so we're clear, we're not building in the floodplain and we're not building in the wetlands. But we do have to disturb the wetland margin because, like I said, this whole property is within the wetland margin. So that's what brings us here tonight. It was suggested by the township staff that I send a letter out to everybody in the neighborhood so they would know what we're doing here. And I did that. I sent that notice out and carbon copied Mr. Gray and I believe Mr. Sullivan with the letter. Sent it out to all the members of the subdivision. I have a certification of that notice that I can provide to Mr. Clark to be included into the record. But that's what brings us here. We just want to build a house that is consistent with all of the other houses in the neighborhood. That's consistent with all the other houses in the neighborhood. I would point out that on an almost identical lot immediately adjacent to ours, if you're facing our property, the house immediate to the left still is under construction, was built in pretty much the same location as ours. I believe that the floodplain does curve back towards the rear of that property, so they didn't have to get relief from this note. But on our property, the floodplain is closer to Jennifer Lane, and that makes this house almost impossible to squeeze between the front yard setback from Jennifer Lane and the floodplain setback that is the note. So that's what brings us here. There's a resolution that is in front of you. All the conditions are fine, and that's what we're here for. I have present Jeff Skinner, who I don't think there are really any engineering issues, but we brought him here as a precaution. I have Mr. Manzo present in the audience. Bob, would you stand up? And I have Joe Ciambrello, who is an investor in the project. Joe, would you stand up? And he's also the builder who would be building the house, present, if you'd have any questions at all about this project.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear from board members, and then we'll open up for public comment if there's any. Mr. Zupka, comments or questions for Mr. Maloney or Mr. Skinner?
Yes. On the aerial photograph, the green line that comes around, that's the edge of what's considered the wetlands or the floodplain?
Approximately, yes.
Okay. I might have something else, but if you can come back to me.
Okay. Mrs. Kozlowski?
Doug, you seem nervous for the first time that I've ever seen you do
I seem nervous?
presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And you're repetitious tonight. What are you nervous about?
I'm not nervous about anything.
I like the project.
I'm sorry. Okay, good. Good. Well, that makes me a lot less nervous then.
Okay, good.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't think that I was nervous.
You were repetitious, you know, that's
Really?
what brings us here. You said that 5 times.
Because I guess this is such a simple project. There's not much to say about it. So I apologize if I said it too often.
We understand simple.
Okay.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, thank you. The green line again on the aerial is the line of the floodplain or of the wetlands, or are we talking about
There's
is it the same?
There's sort of 2 green lines. One's toward the rear of the house, and one's runs actually into the street in front of the house.
And that's the one in the street in front of the house is the wetland. Is that 100-foot
That might
setback
be the
from
margin.
wetlands? Okay.
That's the margin,
Which shows a
right?
lot of the neighborhood within that. And then the green line behind the house is the floodplain.
It's the, no, it's the wetlands line, which is the margin is set off of, the 100 feet.
I thought you said the line in front of the house was the 100-foot.
That's the
It is. Yeah,
It is.
the green line behind it is approximately.
Is the actual wetlands.
Oh, okay.
And then the 100-foot measured off of that line is the line
I see.
that comes out to the street.
And so the floodplain, and we're talking about something different, correct? Where's the floodplain line in here?
The floodplain is approximately the same as the green line, the wetlands line. It's a little closer
Behind
to
the house.
It comes up and just touches the very back of our house here. But generally, the floodplain and the wetlands lines are essentially parallel.
Okay. And how far is the back of the house from that wetland line that runs
That
behind the
wetlands line,
house?
It's approximately 20 feet.
Right, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dens?
You said that on your drawing there, which isn't on ours, is the floodplain line that actually goes through the house
Is that like
in the back there?
Is that a porch on the
Yes.
back, or is that a bump out for a kitchen or something? What is that little?
The floodplain line is the blue line,
Oh, I see. Okay.
and it runs parallel to the wetlands line usually.
But through your house, right?
Just to the very back of it, yes, and just clips the very back. And what this area is actually called is the flood fringe. It's part of the floodplain, but it's an area that your ordinances allow to be disturbed and to be filled as long as the floodway is not changes characteristics that would increase the flood elevation. And that small amount that we are touching there will not adjust the flood elevation of Rock Run at all.
That's all I have right now.
Mr. Chairman, are we actually seeing the line of Rock Run in here?
Looks like it, yes.
The open space in the trees we see is Rock Run?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if Mr. Sullivan could weigh in on floodplains, setback from the wetlands, the 100-foot margin. How do you see these things intersecting in this property?
The ordinance defines flood fringe when there is a mapped floodway. For this creek, there is a floodway. So you can disturb the floodway fringe, as they've shown on their plan with the house, if there's no appreciable or no 1-foot rise in the floodway. And by calculations, the applicant has shown that to be the case. As far as the wetland margin goes, you're only allowed to disturb 20% of the wetland margin. On their property, they're disturbing 100% of the wetland margin.
Right.
I had asked for an aerial of the entire wetland to see what the total disturbance of the wetland margin is for that particular wetland. This map shows some of that, but not all of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, some of the other houses in the neighborhood obviously are sitting within 100 feet of the wetlands margin, that 100-foot setback from the wetlands, but that is a new rule, correct? A new ordinance since these houses were built, the older houses were built, the 100-foot?
I don't know that that's the case. I heard Mr. Maloney say that. I'm not sure that's the case. But clearly, a lot of the development has encroached into the wetland margin.
Is there a history of flooding in this neighborhood? Does anybody know?
On Rock Run, yes.
Have these houses ever been, or these properties
I don't
been
know that.
affected?
I know even back on West Trenton Avenue, it floods very much right along Rock Run there.
Mm-hmm. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Dents, do you have anything else?
The house that's been under construction has been under construction for a long, long time as well. That's
That's correct.
No, nothing else.
Okay. Do we know how, let's see, I'm looking at it, let's see, it's Google Earth. But, because in driving by this looks like, with the house under construction, it looks like just the foundation's been poured. It doesn't look like anything else is there. Whereas this house is considerably more complete now than it was when this picture was taken, right? Yeah. Obviously, if you're looking at Google Earth, there's no way of telling for sure exactly when it was taken. But, yeah, I certainly have a concern about, the proximity to the floodplain and the creek. Especially, we're dealing with some areas of the township where we have people that are living in a flood zone and they're getting hit with high insurance, flood insurance bills that we've been trying to sort of get them out of that area because we think the maps are wrong. But in this case, it'd be tough to argue for that. I do see. Is there any public comment needed? Anyone in the public wish to speak? I see one hand. All right. Is there a motion to open public comment, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Yes, sir.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Scott Scheffler, 27 Jennifer Lane. I live about 3 or 4 houses up across from where we're in the development.
Okay, make sure you're speaking in the microphone,
Oh,
sir.
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's got to get on the tape, too. So.
Okay. Again, my name is Scott Scheffler, 27 Jennifer Lane. Live 2 or 3 houses up from the proposed property. Been there since '91, so we've seen what is going on down that end of the creek. To answer the question, we know there's been flooding in the houses at least as far up as 62 Jennifer Lane, which is 2-3 houses up. I guess that would be, well, heading up Jennifer Lane. I'm not sure if that's considered north or it's considered northeast or northwest even. But regardless, there's concerns about, at least I have concerns about who'd be able to move into the house and how quickly somebody would get in there. The other construction project you mentioned at 70 Jennifer Lane, that would be the house that's just next door. That started building 3 or 4 years ago. It's still not done. There's been stops, there's been starts. I know from what they had asked for the house, they'd asked for a lot of money, and right now they're advertising, well, last thing they advertised was that, oh, you can still choose your kitchen, we'll put money towards that, and so forth. But it does encroach on the wetlands. That is a concern. Could it increase flooding? That's another thing that I worry about within the development. Is it going to affect the other houses? And then you've got the environment of the creek itself. So I don't know if these questions could be answered here tonight. So I don't know if we can get more investigation from an engineering perspective from the township or what would be the next step. But just going through and approving it tonight, me personally, I'd be against it.
I have a question for you. You said as far up as 62 Jennifer Lane flooded. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Would that mean the houses in that area flood?
Further down.
Further down where this one is?
Yes, meaning 66, which is the one, it's one of the original houses of the development before these 2 open lots. That also had some flooding issues. I mean, they're not here tonight, so.
Right.
And one of the folks have moved to another location, so I'm sure they're never going to show up and say yes or no.
Right.
And this was definitely in the flooding and the rains we had back in the mid-90s. I think that would be the best estimate.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Scheffler.
Could I ask you a question, sir? Could you indicate on this picture where the flooding occurred, that it encroached so far?
Sure. This would be up as far as this house here.
Okay.
So in the farthest northeast section of this photograph, there was flooding definitely along in that house.
Mm-hmm.
And there were issues that were brought up when we came to, there was land development being attempted here out by West Trenton Avenue. And that was one of the things that pretty much stalled that development because of, they looked and they said there would be a flooding problem. It would make it worse. But that was years ago. I don't know what we have to do to go through the numbers now, but I think more investigation is needed.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Milley, did you want to comment on that now, or we can see if
Yeah,
there's
and Mr. Scheffler
I think it was,
had normal concerns, and we are not in the wetlands. That's a concern. We're not in the floodplain. That's a concern, and we're not going to increase the flood stage at all, as you heard from Mr. Sullivan. So those are, I think, his three concerns that I took note of. If some of the houses flooded, I think he said in the 90s or something, well, okay, that happens a lot, but we're not even in the floodplain. So there's really nothing that you can do. If there's an extraordinary rain event, there's going to be flooding in a lot of different areas that don't normally get flooded. And I have no idea when he says they had flooding issues. Could be that their sump pump wasn't working or something. I don't know. So I don't think that that's a basis to turn us down, is the fact that a couple of the neighbors may have had a wet basement 15 years ago. But I appreciate the concerns, and I'm glad that he raised them.
Okay. Is there any other?
Mr. Sullivan, a question.
Who?
Mr. Sullivan.
Oh, go ahead, yeah.
Mr. Sullivan, what kind of soil? How's the drainage there?
The map, microphone, they couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. I asked Mr. Sullivan, the township engineer, what kind of soil we had there. We have so much alluvial soil that I'm familiar with, but he probably knows that answer. I don't know what that tract of land is.
There's two different kinds of soil in this area.
Three different kinds.
Two different kinds that
Okay.
are noted on the plan. One is called Hatboro soil, which is an alluvial floodplain soil, poorly drained, high water table. The other is, Mr. Skinner?
It's the Mattapeak Siloam, which is it's a well-drained soil. But the Hatboro soils essentially mimic the wetlands line. Essentially, that's why it's wetlands, is because it's poorly
Could you,
drained.
I'm sorry, could you use the microphone?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Stein.
The Hatboro soil mimics the line of the wetlands. That's why it is wetlands. Is the soil there is poorly drained, whereas the other soil that is well drained cannot support wetlands.
What's the ratio between the two as far as the drainage is concerned, alluvial versus the Hatboro?
Well, assume just a second, because I'm looking here and it looks like three different kinds of soil. Is it the Othello isn't on the?
The Othello is a small area. It's really up front as well. But
looks like the soil boundary line goes right through where that house is. And I can show you on this map here if you want to. Just what I'm looking at. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. But if you've got a soil boundary line coming here, and then you've got the Mattapeak here, the Hatboro here, and you've got the Othello on this side.
Yeah.
This would be the Othello over here, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And the Hatboro is back
The
here.
Hatboro's behind. Sorry, the Hatboro's behind. All right. So
Yes.
like half the house and a good portion behind the house, right behind the house, is that Othello, which is also poorly drained soil. If I'm reading the chart right, Mr. Sullivan. Poorly drained, shallow water table, 0 to 12 inches. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's what it says on the plan, yes, sir.
So there's three kinds of soil.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Essentially, though, the topography is forcing everything back to the wetlands line and the Hatboro soils. I don't know if this was filled at one time, but the property drains from the front to the back and to the creek. The house we're proposing would be a walkout basement, but that basement is still above the flood zone by 1.5 feet. So it would meet all FEMA requirements and would not require flood insurance. Even the basement is above the flood zone. And then the first floor is even higher up, obviously, and that's at the elevation of the road. So there's approximately a 10 to 15 foot rise from the back of the property to the front.
Well, the front of this property, you said the front of this property, front door is basically ground level, right? It's not built up at all?
Well, the front door is a couple feet above the grade
Yeah.
at the front, but that's roughly
No different than any other house, just sort of like,
Yeah.
my front door's, about 2.5 feet
Yeah.
higher than the
Yeah,
steps and stuff. Okay.
And that's approximately 11 feet above the flood zone.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Vislowski, any other questions?
No, but I'd like to commend Mr. Scheffler, because until a citizen comes and raises a question, we could make mistakes, and that's why citizen participation is so important in land development. So I thank you so much for coming.
There any other public comment? See one other hand? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Tom Ryan. I live at 78 Jennifer Lane, right next door to the proposed house. I apologize, one, I don't know if any of this is relevant, and it seems like a lot of it is about the soil and the flooding. These are just my quick concerns to start off. I'm really not sure if I was in favor of this or against it. We used to have a nice full lot, provided privacy. That got knocked down. That was obviously bad. So now kind of we're in the boat where we either like something built up, or I guess you can't really get the woods back, but that was my only thing, was the privacy of the woods. I would be concerned if this did impact the flooding. I've been in my house for about 2.5 years. We have had a little bit of water in the basement, not much. We did need to get flood insurance when we just got our house. I know you're saying with the FEMA thing. He brought up before, the house next door has been being built for just way too long, and what happens, it gets overgrown. Trash comes in. I've been out in the lot next door picking up trash a couple of times so far. I know other neighbors have as well. So my concern would be how quickly this gets done. So it's really just getting something up so it's not just a vacant lot, and how fast that gets up would be my only two concerns. Thanks.
Okay.
Sir, you said you live directly next door, which would be right here?
Yes.
And you are required to have flood insurance?
Yes. We just refinanced our mortgage less than a year ago, and the flood insurance was a sticking issue. I definitely remember going through that whole process.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
If I may add, his property is lower. Jennifer Lane is coming downhill as you go to his house. So I don't have an elevation on his house, and I don't know, he said a minor amount of flooding. I don't know what elevation that was, but his house is definitely lower as the road comes downhill. And we have based our elevations on the FEMA plan and the FEMA requirements of a 1.5 feet above the FEMA elevation for the floodwaters.
Well, looking at the line you have there for the floodplain, it looks like it's going behind his house, because that would be his house, right?
Yes, it comes and starts going towards his property. There was an area filled here to cover drainage pipes that come down from the development and empty out at this point to go to Rock Run down beyond here. So the fact that the floodplain is coming back towards his house may show that his backyard is lower than ours and is more subject to flooding than what our property demonstrates.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. The long, skinny lot that's right next to the property we're talking about, is that an easement of some kind to the right
yes,
of this house?
Yes, that is a drainage easement for these pipes that come down through and drain towards Rock Run.
Okay.
The drawings we have, the elevation lines do touch the house. Mr. Ryan, was it? Mr. Ryan, is that right? Okay, Mr. Ryan. And the elevation lines look almost identical with the elevation of the house we're looking at, possible construction. Now, as you're saying, the house you're proposing to build is going to be built up quite a bit, I guess, or from the back to the front at least. I don't know if Mr. Ryan's is or not. If he sort of has a walkout basement, sort of from his house. But the slope actually just from what I'm looking at, the slope looks pretty close to being the same between his house and the one you're looking at. Okay. Is there any other public comment? I see no hands. Where's the motion to close public comment?
So moved.
I'd like to ask a question.
We'll close and we'll come back around. All right, motion to close public comment and second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Mrs. Wisłowski?
Yes, I'm wondering why it's taking so long to build that other house. What is the problem?
It's not our project. We don't know.
No, but there has to be some reason. There's money invested, and water scares me. This is not relevant, but I'll take 30 seconds to tell you. I had a tornado blow the roof off my house in Florida last Thursday, 5 days ago. And it acted like a big bathtub. Water is a frightening thing, and I can understand why Mr. Scheffler is concerned. And the big question would be, Mr. Scheffler, do you know why that other house is taking so long to be built? Is it money, or is there some problem about the topography of that lot?
I honestly don't know. I know they asked for almost $500,000 for that house 3 years ago, but today I don't know what they're asking.
Let the record show Mr. Scheffler said he's not aware of why the process is taking so long. He knows the asking price for the house originally was $500,000. He doesn't know if that's continued or not, so it's possible that could be an issue. I don't know. But thank you, Mr. Scheffler.
And I can assure you that Mr. Manzo, and I think Mr. Manzo would throttle me if he wanted to contradict me. He wants this built yesterday. You know, he wanted this built several months ago. So I can assure you that he's going to move as fast as humanly possible to get this built.
Okay. All right. Mr. Zipka, you said earlier you might have comments later on. Do you have any?
Were there in the letter from our engineer, it does talk about the 100-year floodplain and 100-year storms. And I'm also hearing about what FEMA requires. Now, the Midwest just got hit with a large storm that people never thought was going to happen to their house. FEMA has a lot of regulations, and they talk about the 100-year storm. And look what happened in Katrina. The storm that hit that was far past any 100-year storm. I know it has nothing to do with us, but the atomic reactor in Japan was designed for a 100-year storm. But if you go back 140 years in history, they got hit with a tsunami that was far greater than what they were designed for. We're going into a cycle that we're getting more and more storms. Unfortunately, I see from the picture we're going to take down a lot of trees, a lot of shrubs. We're going to have a lot more open ground. I just have a fear it's going to create other issues with water right in this area, and I can't support this. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just for Mr. Sullivan, the requirement of the 100-foot setback from wetlands, that is an increase from, it used to be only 20 feet? Is that correct? Is that a recent, or has this been long-standing?
I think this has been long-standing.
Right.
How long?
I don't know the answer.
I remember
at least as long as I've been here.
Yeah, I remember dealing with it when I was on the Planning Commission.
But it's been since these houses were built in this development.
2003.
Is that what you're getting at?
Well, it's one of my questions. Obviously, since these houses were built, unless there was some kind of variance when they were built.
They were built in the late 80s, right?
Yeah.
Mid-80s?
Sure.
But theoretically, none of the houses that have been constructed are within that 20-foot buffer from the wetland or the floodplain line.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not the wetland margin criteria was in effect at the time, I don't know.
Okay, so you don't know whether it was in effect at the time. I mean, if it was, then they would have had to have a variance because they're sitting right smack in the middle of it. Mr. Ryan's house is completely within it.
That's correct.
Like. So it does seem, on a principle of fairness, it does seem like if all the others, these other houses were built within that 100-foot area, why single out a few, except that they weren't built yet. They haven't been built yet. So, I mean, that seems to me to be an issue of fairness. However, if there are serious issues of potential flooding in the area, then that's another issue. It's complicated.
Yep.
Mr. Snipes, so there's no
Yes.
confusion. All of the other properties that were built do not encroach on the 20-foot setback.
From the
This
wetlands,
property will.
Right.
So the issue that is before you this evening and the waiver that is being requested deals with the encroaching into that 20 foot.
20 foot of the floodplain or of the wetlands?
20 foot of the floodplain.
In the floodplain. Okay, that was my confusion. All
Yes,
right.
and also the 100-foot wetland margin.
Right.
There's two things going
The
on.
wetland margin looks like it's about 20 feet away, but the floodplain goes right, looks like it goes right underneath this
Just
part
about
of the
20
house.
foot in front of that
Right.
wetlands approximately.
Okay.
What percentage of the lot will the dwelling unit take? It looks like it's up closer to the road, and it looks like there's room in the back unless it goes down into that floodplain further. But, you know, I was all set to approve this. I liked it. However, since Mr. Scheffler raised his questions, I am concerned. You know, and I don't know what our remedy is, because it looks to me like a delay may not get answers that are relevant. You know, why, for example, the other house isn't finished, but it might have something to do with a water problem. And, you know, we could approve it or turn it down tonight, and I fear making a mistake. You know, I just think that we have a responsibility to all of the people in that development.
Absolutely, but the problem is, the way I look at it, this won't have any
Answer my
adverse...
question first, Mr. Maloney.
Okay,
What ratio of the ground cover as compared with the lot, what percentage are you going to have as no runoff? You know, you're going to be able to answer that. You certainly must have that with your engineer.
Absolutely. The building area ratio is 11% of the lot size. The impervious surface ratio, that would include the driveway,
Sure.
Is 16%. And in both those cases, they're well below the ordinance requirements. This is frankly an oversized lot. It's just about 20,000 square feet, and you're permitted 8,000 square feet in this zoning district. You're permitted, for example, the building area ratio that we're at 11%, you're permitted 30%. The impervious surface ratio, where we're at 16%, you're permitted 45% impervious surface. So we're well below. In fact, and then if you go down all of the different zoning requirements that are shown on the table of our plans, in each case, we're well below the ordinance requirements.
When I looked at it, I didn't see any obvious, you know, requirement. And that is because, as you explained, we're well within what our ordinance commands.
Right.
But the one nagging question for me would be the undeveloped house, why it's not finished, and does that have anything to do with drainage?
I suspect it has more to do with economics than with water.
If we knew the answer to that, it would help me to decide.
Board members, it's also important to point out that the undeveloped property was part of the previously approved land development. The fact that that property may not have been finished as of right now, even though it was done as part of a previously approved land development application, really doesn't affect the review of this. And candidly, if the majority of the board is inclined not to approve this land development, I would not advise you to do it based on this one incomplete property, because I do not believe that that is a proper consideration for you, because I do not believe that this developer, this applicant, should be held responsible for the deficiencies of another applicant or another developer.
Well, if they meet the requirements of our ordinance, I don't know that we have an alternative, because if you comply in every way, then we invite a lawsuit if we turn it down. That's my view of this.
But they do not comply in every way. According to the resolution, they need a waiver from that section of our ordinance, and it's listed, they need a waiver from section 191.52.1B8, requiring a 100-foot wetland margin where a maximum of 20% of the margin is allowed to be disturbed. So they do need a waiver, so they do not comply in all respects.
And again, the response to that waiver is that twofold. Number one is that to the extent that we need the waiver, clearly this is hardship. I mean, if our entire lot is within that wetland margin area. Second of all, my research suggests that the wetland margin did not exist when this subdivision was approved. And I can't tell you exactly when it was. I was looking at books from the 1990s today to try to figure it out, and it wasn't there. It is in the current subdivision ordinance, which appears to have been passed in 2001. So it appears to me that this margin requirement came into effect in 2001 or
But
thereafter.
you're not pleading hardship, otherwise you'd be before the zoning hearing board.
If it was a zoning requirement, yes. This is in the subdivision ordinance. So the wetland margin requirement is in your subdivision ordinance rather than zoning.
Yeah, well.
So, okay, Mr. Zipka, did you have a question?
Yes. You stated the house takes up 11%. Is that the entire 11% of the entire lot? How much of it does it take up, excluding the floodplains and the wetlands? That's not 11% because you can't build on the wetlands or the.
That would be the entire lot.
Right.
Well, going from the green line for the
No.
the buffer, but
For the buffer?
yeah,
The margin?
yeah.
The lot is completely within the wetland.
Microphone.
Yeah, sorry. Mr. Skinner, to his microphone.
The lot is completely within the wetlands margin line. It comes out to the street, the 100-foot from the wetlands.
I think his question is the actual wetlands, how much of that lot is actually buildable? I mean, it's a huge lot, but obviously a big portion of it you can't build on at all.
I would say approximately 50%. I don't have that number.
So that changes that 11% number. I think that's what Phil was getting
Yeah,
at.
that
Mr.
takes
Zucker,
your
correct?
11%.
Yes, so that would make it roughly 22% then, which is still well under the 30% allowed by your ordinances.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we've had quite a few comments from board members and also heard from people in the public. This is preliminary land development is what they're looking for. Is there a motion at this time?
Mr. Chairman, the more we've talked, the less comfortable I've felt with it. I wonder, as Mrs. Wislowski said, I don't know if we take some time, if we don't approve it tonight, take some time and do a little more investigation. I don't know if we're actually going to come up with any better answers than what we have now. Kind of the facts are the facts, and it seems this lot was not developed at the time for an obvious reason.
Well, if we approve preliminary, we still have the opportunity to strike it down if we find a reason to do it that's valid.
No.
Correct or no?
No. The applicant's plan will not change in any discernible way between preliminary approval and final approval. By approving the preliminary plan tonight, you would be, in essence, approving the final plan.
Okay.
There are no dramatic changes that would be made. Also, the applicant is at the end of their time period from when they have the right to have their application heard and decided.
We'll end up with a deemed approved then.
Correct. So it either has to be approved, denied, or Mr. Maloney needs to grant us another extension as he stands there this evening.
Well, with that, I'm going to make a motion to deny tonight.
Okay. Motion to deny the preliminary land development for 74 Jennifer Lane. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zepka?
Yes, to deny.
Mrs. Wislowski?
I'll vote yes reluctantly, but I don't know where I can get any other answers that could cause me to change my vote.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Sims?
Yes, although I feel badly about it.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, item 2 on our agenda tonight is consider purchase of an inclusive play space at the Falls Township Community Park. Mr. Gray?
Yes, a quote for an inclusive play space to be located at the Falls Township Community Park has been secured. The total cost of the project is $188,659 from George Ely Associates. This will be purchased from the CoStars list and has been budgeted in the 2011 Falls Township budget. Endorsements from the Disabled Persons Advisory Board and members of the Park and Rec Board also have been secured. The board is asked to consider the purchase of the play space from George Ely Associates for $188,659. In addition, tonight, Ms. Tara Ely and Mr. Bill Reese are here to answer any future questions you may have.
Is your microphone on?
Yes.
It's difficult to hear you.
Mr. Reese, want to come on up?
Good evening, everyone. How are you this evening?
Good.
If I could have Tara Ely come up, because she'll be able to answer any questions you have about the project. I just want to reiterate that Mr. Gray and I did attend a PowerPoint presentation by Dave and Tara Ely back on March 28th. There were members from the Park and Rec Board there, as well as the Disabled Advisory Board was there. And also Mr. Bob Leary is in the audience tonight. He's willing to answer any questions that you might have for him as well.
Okay. Just give us an idea, if you don't mind, Mr. Reese, in terms of this playground. How's it different from the one that's on the other side of the park in Phase 2, and really how it's different from all the playgrounds in
The inclusive play space, it's an opportunity for anyone in a wheelchair to be able to go in any parts of this play unit, which is completely different than our normal playground units. So it's completely handicap accessible, and we feel it's going to be a great thing for the community. But yet, anybody can go on this play piece as well.
Right, so it's not necessarily restricted to people with disabilities. You know, any child can.
Any child can go on it.
But the access is obviously something that allows children who are in wheelchairs or who have some disability to take advantage of it. Okay.
Yes.
Where will this be located in the Township Park?
On Phase 1, Mr. Gray, could you just point to the area? It runs along the parking lot between the soccer shed and our garage, right along there.
Okay. All right. Anybody who's at the Falls Community Day last year remembers that's where the tents were.
That's where
for
the tents were,
cookout?
yes. Where the cook-off
so it'll be
was, yes.
a playground now. And looking at the dimensions we have here, playground, it's roughly 100 feet by 40 feet. Mrs. Ely, just give us an idea of what makes this, what are some of the features in this that are unique, let's say?
Well, the inclusive nature of the play space makes it unique in that it not only allows any child of any ability to play, but also you have to remember parents and relatives, sitters, anyone who might have a disability. It allows them to also access the elevated play areas and also the ground level components. On the proposal, not only is it play equipment accessible for everyone, but also the surfacing. So it's not a traditional mulch play surfacing, it's a poured-in-place bonded rubber, so a wheelchair or someone using crutches or assistance of that nature can easily maneuver onto the playground, through the playground, and on and off the structure.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan, the poured-in-place bonded rubber, is that pretty much the surface of the Challenger field?
It's similar. It's not quite the same, and I assume there's a height a child can fall?
Yes.
What is the fall height for?
The fall height for this equipment is 6 feet.
Okay, it's the Challenger field is basically, you can walk on it, you won't feel it move on you, but this, you'll feel this move up and down.
Right,
because of the fall
has some
height.
give to it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, we have some people here, obviously, to talk about the playground equipment. I apologize for monopolizing the questions so far. And again, Mr. Leary is here from the Disabled Persons Advisory Board, if anybody has a specific question for him. Mr. Zupka, comments or questions?
No, I have none.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
Yes, this equipment is different than any I have seen, and I'm wondering if this is the only company that manufactures this.
No, there are, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how many equipment manufacturers there are. They are each rated to meet IPEMA, which is the International Playground Equipment Manufacturers Association standards. We, of course, are one of those. But yes, there are, I could name at least 3 that do similar designs. Not exactly the same, because we all have our own sort of flair to our own equipment, but similar in nature.
Was there a competition among the other manufacturers? Do we know if we got it at the best price?
Well, I think it was, we went off the CoStarz list, Mr. Gray, is that correct?
Yes, the CoStarz list.
Were there other manufacturers on CoStarz, or?
There are other vendors on the CoStarz list. We have dealt with George Ely Associates for many years.
Did they bid on this particular project?
No, this was the one bid we secured.
This was not a bid. This is on the CoStarz list, which is on the state list, which means that George Ely, like people who sell trucks, where we buy a lot of heavy equipment off the CoStarz list, they are essentially vetted through the state. They provide a number that is a non-negotiable number on their equipment, and it allows municipalities to go through and purchase equipment without the need to go through the formal bidding process. The theory being that when someone like George Ely offers this equipment at a bulk price, that it is a highly competitive price, and you are also saving the cost of bidding the job. While it is in many ways designed for municipalities that are a little smaller than we are, CoStarz is used by every municipality throughout the state, and it has been reviewed by our office, and everything is in compliance with the CoStarz regulations.
No comment. I just like bidding, and I like to know we're getting the best price if we're doing this. And I don't think that the state should be our beacon, because I think some of the worst expenditures occur at the state level. So,
Mr. Snipes?
Mr. Chairman, I understand we have this in our budget, so we've budgeted for this, and there's a very nice endorsement from the Disabled Persons Advisory Board, says they endorse it 100%. Everything I see will be a boon. As we said, we don't have any other playground like this that's totally accessible to all kids in the township, so I think it's a great addition. I don't have any, well, the Aero Glider, let me just ask a question. If I go over and hop on the Aero Glider, is this thing going up and down like this?
It glides back and forth, so
Oh,
almost like a
glides,
rocking
okay.
chair formation.
Great.
Is there
Looks like fun.
Is there an age limit on some of this equipment that
No,
we can? Okay,
the younger limit, we would say at 2 years old.
okay. I was thinking at the upper end.
Oh,
to
no,
keep Mr.
it's
yeah,
good
okay.
for all children of all ages.
All right. Mr. Dents?
I'm just going to echo what Mr. Snipes said, and I think it'll be a great addition to the park.
Okay. Mr. Leary, did you have any comments or questions? Or,
No, we reviewed everything, and you made one comment, and they graciously accommodated that.
Okay. Let the record show Mr. Leary said that they did have one concern, which the George Ely Associates addressed, and they're very much in favor of this project. So thank you, Mr. Leary. Let's see. I know there was a question about the CoStarz list, and obviously we buy police cars. In fact, I think we just did last month or something, bought some police vehicles the month before.
Bucket truck.
Yeah, bucket truck rather, and then some police vehicles we've bought off the CoStarz list. We use it quite a bit. Mr. Reese, just so people understand, we've redone a lot of playgrounds around the township. New ones, but also redoing some of the old. Where have we used George Ely before?
Pretty much on every single lot, but one or two.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and that's
So-
been for the last, since 10 years since I've been here.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So obviously a company that has a pretty good track record in Falls Township.
Yes, and they have an outstanding record of, like if something breaks or something gets damaged in any way, their return time on getting us the equipment out is very, very quick, very, very fast.
Okay.
As John Gillis could attest to as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr.
All right.
Harvey.
Yes, ma'am.
Our cameraman would like me to hold this up so that he can take a picture of it,
Mm-hmm.
and the individuals in the audience could too, but he's thinking in terms of the people who are watching the tape of the meeting. So I will hold it up. I don't know if he wants me to stand here or go down by the podium.
Okay.
Jenny, where do you want it? By the podium?
Is there any public comment needed?
Okay.
I see no hands. Okay. By the podium. All right. Mr. Kozlowski is going to show this, and I don't know if we have this. We have an electronic copy of this
Yeah, we could put a copy on the website.
on the website. Okay, all right, but okay. So, okay. So, are there? Okay, the different pictures. Are there any other comments or questions from board members?
No.
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 Okay. All right. With that, then we'll and no public comment needed. We'll take a motion. We're looking to purchase the playground equipment from George Ely Associates for $188,659.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the inclusive play space from George Ely Associates for the price of $188,659.
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Kozlowski is going back, so she's present for the vote. Okay, Mrs. Pullen, can you poll the board, please?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Gray,
Thank you
get
very
some
much.
straw.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr.
Can I have
Leary,
mine
thank you again,
back?
too.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
See, we want.
Okay, next item on our agenda is consider awards for the 2011 landscaping services. Mr. Gray.
Yes, on Monday, March 28th, the township opened bids for landscaping services. 3 bids were received. While reviewing the bids, it was noted the bids had some incomplete responses. At this time, the board is asked to consider rejecting the bids.
I can't hear you real well. I don't know whether it's my hearing or whether your microphone's not adjusted. Could you move closer to it?
The board is asked to consider rejecting the bids and reauthorizing advertisement for landscaping services.
Okay. And as you said, Mr. Gray, all 3 bids had some pieces missing from the...
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. And I think in talking with Mr. Clark, I think we can reject these bids if the board so chooses, and then immediately reauthorize the township manager to rebid this project.
That's correct.
Okay.
Was there any bid that was done correctly?
There were all 3. After reviewing all 3, it was noted that each one had something incomplete.
Then define what is incomplete.
There was some shrub, tree trimming that was not included, fall cleanup not included, spring cleaning not included, mulching, how many yards? We didn't have responses for that. Shrub trimming was not included in 1 bid. Flowers and shrubs, we had hourly rates, but how many hours? There were several different items which led to that conclusion.
I called Mr. Gray because there was a complaint from one of the bidders, and the complaint was twofold. Number one, there was another item bid at the time, and that was awarded immediately. There was a high bid and a lower bid, and that was done. But no reason given to the bidder who appeared to have done his paperwork right. And I called you to question that, and I wondered why it was not handled like the other bid.
I do not have the authority to approve these. These would be taken before the Board of Supervisors for approval.
I realize that, but, there needed to be some explanation given. Are the bidders here tonight? Let's have hands. Just one bidder? Would you approach the microphone? Because I'd like to hear about the flaw in your bid.
Don Sarach, Falls Township. My bid should have been complete, what I thought. Did you find something wrong with it?
Yes.
And
what was the...
The one item I found was, there was an item for shrub trimming twice a year. The dollar amount there was a dollar amount, but it was not in the amount column. So it was left out of the total dollar amount.
I've been doing this it's 11 years now.
Yes.
And things been the same. Correct?
Yes, this is the second year, though, that we have had this taken out.
The one bidder, he didn't measure for mulch, so he had no idea what we had to put there. He had a figure for the price of the mulch and installation, but he didn't have a figure for how many yards. Correct?
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I had a total price of what mine's going to be. So just like last year.
There are technical defects in all bids. I believe this individual's company was not the low bidder.
Right.
If we are going to reject one bid because of a technical defect, we have to reject all of the bids for technical defects. If we are going to waive the technical defects, which is our right to do, they're not the low bidder. The other problem is we don't know exactly what this is going to cost us because some of the responses from all three were a little confusing, and it makes it hard to come up with an apples-to-apples comparison. We are recommending that all the bids be rejected, that we immediately reauthorize it. My office has talked to Mr. Gray. We're going to clarify a couple of different points in the bid to make sure that it'll be a true apples-to-apples comparison when you're looking to award this bid at your first meeting in May.
I'd like to be heard on this.
So,
But
Mr.
last
Stratch, I
year, they did reject one. His numbers were not even close, so they rejected it right then.
Whose?
Last year.
Whose bid?
It wasn't mine. It wasn't Andy Dell's. It was somebody else's.
I don't recall the third bid.
There were 3 bidders last year.
Okay. I don't recall the third one.
But we don't know who was the. I mean, I think Mr. Stratch, your bid I think was the most of the 3. Your bid was the most complete. But as Mr. Clark said, it was the highest. Now we don't know. You know, if we go with someone who we think these guys are going to be cheaper, it wouldn't be you necessarily. Then we could find out later that, you know, their prices weren't exactly, we didn't understand something, all of a sudden now they're more expensive than you. And now you lose because you didn't have the job, and we lose because we paid more money.
Mr. Harvey.
So what we're looking to do is just clean up and re-advertise. You'll be able to rebid, and then you know, we can have it done, and if you're the low bidder, then we go with you.
But
That's
now,
the
I would
issue.
like to
my
be
number
heard,
was
please.
red. That day it was red. My number was red that day. So he knows where I'm at. My number was disclosed.
Mr.
Think
Surratt,
about the other 2.
please, you brought this problem to me. You're right next to my property in Fallsington. I care about the integrity of the bidding procedure. I saw those bids. Now, if you bid the way they have permitted you to bid each subsequent year, then I think that changing the rules in the middle of the game is not cricket.
We're not changing the rules. We're making them
Mr.
adhere
Clark,
to the rules.
I would expect you to allow me to speak. You were not elected in this township, and yet you run everything here. Now, I'm telling you right now, I have a point of view, and I think I know as much about the law as you do, because I've seen you make some of the stupidest mistakes I've ever seen.
All right,
Don't interrupt me again.
Focus on the issue, please, Mrs.
Now,
Wisniewski.
Mr. Surratt, if you bid the same way last year and the year before that, and Mr. Gray had heads up on it because I did call him. I looked at those and I could not understand why they did not award your bid. First of all, you're a Falls Township individual, businessman. You bid the same way. I happen to know the quality of your work. And I saw you get cheated by this board almost, not this board, the different people here, whenever the manager tried to buy your property that you now occupy, right beside our community park and beside my property. And it wasn't fair then, and I don't think it's fair now, because we're deviating from what we permitted before. And when Mr. Gray went running to someone, then all of a sudden they were, I think I made a mistake calling him, and then we could have had some answers tonight that would have been all over the place, because it wouldn't have been consistent. But I do not believe that it is fair to take that bid away from you, because you put the number down, but according to Mr. Gray's explanation now that I heard, you just didn't put it in the right square. La-dee-da. And for that, we had one of those bids where the fella didn't complete anything. That should have been rejected. But the fact that you bid it the way you did always in the past, and if they had known they were going to tie the knots tighter, you would have been alerted to that, and that would have been the fair way to advise every possible bidder to do the same thing. Now they know what you've bid.
Correct.
And it's not fair to do that. If they're going to change it, let them change it for next year, but not pull the carpet out from under you now when they have accepted your bids before. I'm very angry about it. And it happened to me once, whenever I bought something, and they tried not to fulfill it. And I said, go ahead and let everyone who bids in Falls Township understand that the bidding procedure means nothing. You know, you have to be consistent, and you do not change the rules from one year to the next without allowing the people who consistently bid and are Falls Township businesses. And, you know, all of a sudden, I don't like the way it looks. It stinks.
So what do we do about them knowing what my bid was?
I think what we need to do, and I'm ready to make a motion that we change that bidding process and define the rules for next year's bid. But I think we need to address this issue now.
After last year, it was brought to our attention that our bid specs weren't clear. They were very unclear on how much of this and how much of that, when, how often. I was under the impression that for this year, we cleaned it up pretty good, and we were pretty clear on what we wanted, when we wanted it, how often, et cetera, how many flats of flowers, and so forth. When we got the bids back, I talked to Pete about it again, because someone offered to help us make it as clear as possible. He said again that he went through the bids, and he had written down so that it was as clear as night and day. You're going to do this many times a year for X amount of flats of plants. You're going to do this much mulch here, there, wherever, this often, et cetera, so that it was cut and dry. There was no more gray area. Is that correct, Mr. Gray?
Mr. Arneo and I did go through the bid forms to try to clear them up as best as we could.
Now, in last year, I'm going to comment too. I do remember the bids last year. There was one bidder that wasn't even in the ballpark. He was the low bidder, but he wasn't even.
Correct.
I mean, you can't really argue that. You'll agree with that. He wasn't even in the. Like, his number was ridiculously. Obviously, he didn't do any homework or.
He was rejected. Right.
I don't remember the details, but I remember him being rejected, correct?
That's correct? Was he rejected?
Yeah, I believe so.
He was rejected, but I think the issue was that the other bids we had were more acceptable, I guess, and that's, I guess, the issue we're looking at that point last year.
Yes.
Well, you ought to pull mine from last year and look at this one and that one, and you'll see they're the same.
Well, the bid specs were a lot different this year, though, were they not?
Not really. On the line items you got there, I don't know, there's 7 of them. The total number is what you're interested in at the bottom. What you're going to pay for the season.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yes.
Is that what I have?
Except for shrub trimming, that dollar amount is not
Year,
included.
and there is a total there.
It's not in the amount column.
Is it? Is it?
You got a total
I guess
what
the
you're
question.
gonna pay for the season. Is that what you want?
But you're not going to do the shrub trimming? That's included in the proposal request form?
So,
Is there a number there?
But it's not in the amount column?
so in other words, Mr. Gray, let me just clarify here. Of the things that are in the amount column,
Yes.
okay, do they add up to the number that's the total?
The numbers that are in the amount column do add up to the $19,713, with the exception of the one item that says $25 per man-hour.
All right, okay. All right, so the issue is that the total that you've submitted has $19,713, which doesn't count the number you have in the shrub trimming. So the total doesn't match. If you're saying that number should be over in the other column, it doesn't match.
Total of that's what you're going to pay for the total season. 19,713.
13.
All right, Mr. Stretch, we're gonna hear some board. Yeah, we're not even in public comment yet. So let's, Mr. Stretch, let me just ask you to sit down for a little bit. I want to have other board members comment, and then we'll open up for public comment.
I have a question for him.
Oh, okay. All right, Mr. Stretch, sorry about that. Turn back around. Sorry,
Back to the microphone.
Mr. Zupka has a question.
Your total at the bottom, the $19,713.37. does that include the shrub trimming in that you're showing at
Yes.
$1,900?
It
Is that
does.
twice a year at $1,900, or is that,
That's the total,
that's the total?
yeah, for the season.
Okay, so that's getting the shrubs trimmed twice a year, you're charging?
Split that in half.
Okay, 800. Okay, so you just put that in the wrong column?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, that's my question.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, other comments or questions from board members? Mr. Snipes?
Mr. Chairman, from what I understand, the bid specs were a little confusing last year. An attempt was made to make them clearer this year. I guess I wanted to ask
My
you, did
understanding.
they seem clearer this year than
Seemed
last
almost
year?
the same. There was a couple things changed in the paragraphs, but the line items themselves, where you put your numbers, were
Was
same.
clear. Okay. So it sounds like all that's happened is some confusion around some technicalities is what we're talking about. I mean, some things, numbers not being added up correctly. And so, from what I understand, if one bid is rejected because of technicalities, then all of them have to be rejected.
But if he
Is
didn't
that
have a
correct?
total number of how many yards of mulch, then he didn't measure.
Well, here's the thing.
That day.
Well, here's the thing, Mr. Stratch. Here's the problem. I mean, we had a chance. Mr. Zupka just asked you to clarify, which you were able to do. Technically, if we're going to say, okay, fine, he gave us a clarification, so now we understand, let's award this to, dawn to dusk. The problem is that the other two bidders could have said, wait a minute, if we didn't know that, we'd have been there, we'd have clarified. And
Yeah, but
maybe their numbers would have been lower.
He has the number there.
But it doesn't add up to the number at the bottom. That's the thing. That's the point that Mr. Gray was making. Mr. Snipes, any further comments or questions?
No, not right now.
Okay. Mr. Dents, comments or questions?
No, not right now.
Okay.
I have a question.
Well, Mr. Clark, I'm going to go to you in just in terms of the explanation here, especially, like we said, the issue that Mr. kind of Zupka asking for clarification is that what kind of, I mean, it's obviously, we'd like this to be nice and easy and simple. This should be a relatively easy process, but it's difficult, and obviously it's difficult because you're planning for things you don't necessarily know. We don't know if it's dry like last year, we're not going to need quite as many services maybe as this, but we don't know that. So what's the situation we're in here, I guess?
There is case law that indicates that allowing a bidder to clarify something after they have already submitted their bid is not permitted. And that a clarification is in essence allowing them almost a second bite at the apple. The problem that we have in this instance is the low bidder in this instance he clearly can't do the work for the amount that he bid. The total that he has indicated is just under $4,000. It's clear that he put down a per yard cost per mulch, but then didn't indicate how much mulch there would be. The problem that Mr. Gray is confronted with in making a recommendation to the board is it's difficult to, again, as I said, get an apples to apples comparison about what has actually been bid. If you allow one bidder to clear something up, if you allow them to clarify something, then you need to allow all of the other bidders to do that as well. And you need to, it's not our responsibility to go in and start saying, well, we think it's going to be X amount of yards of mulch times $63.10 equals. The specs need to be cleaned up a little bit, need to make it a little bit clearer, so at the end of the day, Mr. Gray can look at that bottom number and then can make a recommendation to the board.
I'd also like to add one thing, Mr. Sarach, is that it? Yep. If you add up your column here, it doesn't add up, because the $1,900 doesn't add up to the 19,000.
19,713.
Right, so it would be 19,713 plus 1,900.
No, it's 19,713 total.
Okay. All right. There was one hand for public comment. Is there a motion to open public comment, please?
I'm not finished asking Mr. Sarach because I believe the thing that makes this unfair is the fact that everybody knows what your bid is. The bottom line number, the total pennies adds up, does it not?
No,
It should.
it doesn't.
Doesn't.
That's the problem.
19.7. Well, if we took the time to do the the bids and the procedure, how come we didn't do it right? How come it was still confusing? I make
I'm
my
not
point.
honestly, I didn't see the bid specs, and I'm not a landscaper, so I don't know how to bid on landscaping work.
No,
This is the
but
honestly.
our
I was under
staff,
the, wait,
Mr.
I'm under the
Gross.
impression that we did our best to make it as clear as possible this year, at least clearer than it was last year, but apparently we failed yet again.
I think so. That's why I think it's wrong to do it this way, because we telegraph his bid. That
I agree.
isn't fair. Thank you, Mr. Dance. I thought that you would.
Your interest is in the total number at the bottom.
I understand, and it doesn't add up.
When I say it's going to be 19,713, this is what you're going to pay at the end of the season.
I know, but this is where the
we believe
clarification is wrong. The numbers that you have in here don't add up to $1,900.
Right. The process, and this is the problem, Mr. Stretch, because we're not doubting you. We're not saying that you're
Right,
right.
there's confusion on not just your part, on everybody that bid.
Right, we believe you. The issue is that, and we're talking about keeping the bidding process, the integrity of the bidding process, is one of the reasons why you do bidding is because you want to make sure that I'm not giving, my cousin Steve the job of like doing all the township work on parks and things like that, and he's getting X amount of dollars and everything, et cetera. That we're opening it up to anybody. You bid. Nobody sees anybody's bids till it's opened, and we go with the low bidder. That's the way it's done for almost, for most of the things we do here, for the road program, for everything else. The problem is it becomes that strict. You have to be very strict with it. So if there's any problem, you almost have to reject them. Even in some cases, we had somebody come in like just a couple minutes late to the bidding, drop off something that was a couple minutes late, and they were out. Because they were a minute late, 2 minutes late, something like that. They weren't there when that time said. We didn't even open it. We don't want it. We have to be that strict. That could have been the low bid. We don't know. So we have to be very, very strict. And that's the case where even something that's minor, like with what happened with you, and as I said, your bid was the most complete. Right. If we're going to be strict with everybody, we're going to be strict with everybody.
Mr. Chairman.
Now, but I understand your point about, that your bid's been out there now, and obviously the competition's going to know, oh, this is what I got to get under. I understand that.
Yeah, is that fair?
No.
Well, and that's the problem. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Zupka.
We know we have one bid that's ridiculously low.
Right.
The other bid, if you look through the columns, they're not even totaled up. Here's a gentleman that's done the work for us, has been more than satisfactory with his work. He gives us a total figure. Regardless to where he's got things in the columns, we've dealt with him before. He's going to stand up and do what he said he did for the bid.
Nobody's doubting that, Mr. Zucker. That's not the issue.
That's not the problem.
I know.
That's not the issue. Nobody's
It
doubting
might not
Mr.
be the
Stratton.
issue, but we can't go and rebid this because, he could get
So
underbid.
even if we go to the low bidder, then it's still not going to be him.
No, because the other one, just like we
he's
did
saying
the
that
other
two are
year, was so
incomplete. They have no
ridiculously
choice but to
low,
go
we
with this.
turned
So
it
he's saying
down.
That they disqualified because they're so incomplete. All right. I know I see another patient hand out there. Let's open for a public comment, please. Just
So
give us
moved.
another, is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Mr. Dell.
First off, I think you guys denounced we had a real low bidder last time, but I think he thought it was a monthly charge. So he came up with a price like $800 or $1,000, and he thought it was scattered over 12 months. This guy for $4,000 might think it's scattered over 6 months. They're obviously not reading the packet.
Right.
I offered to simplify it for you, but I know you think that might be a favoritism thing, but I opted not to bid on it this year. But I would help you clarify and do this, because I'm not going to bid on it, and I'm not going to come $2 under Don's number. And in all reality, I don't know if Don's price is the same this year as it was last year. I don't know, but it is public record. If I wanted to see Mr. Sriracha's bid from last season, any landscaper can come into public records, pay $0.25 for a copy, and find out exactly what he charged you guys last year and exactly what he did for that money. So they can come close, other than if you guys changed the proposal at all and added more items to the proposal. But the people have the opportunity to pull last year's proposal, last year payment to him. And I understand that he's already telegraphed his sign, but if these people come back, the ones he bid against, and bid $2 below him, I just would not allow it personally. I would think that's just obvious what they've pulled. But again, I offer to simplify, because it doesn't have to be that complex. But your bid, to me even, the previous year was so confusing that I mean, I sat there and stared at it and kept reading it, and every time I came up with a different answer. So I didn't even look at your bid spec this year because I knew I wasn't going to bid on.
Didn't read it at all?
I didn't read it at all, but I have it at the house. I'm going to read it. If I can make some corrections on it and give it back to you really quick. I don't know if it'll help you. You can use them or not use them. It's your choice. But I'm not doing it to favor myself. I mean, everybody's going to be able to read the bid spec.
Same bid spec,
But
right.
and I know Don's done the work here for years, and I understand it's not a question of his integrity and his work. But if you allow him to do it, then these other people can come in and say, hey, he had an unfair advantage, and you're showing favoritism to him because he's been here for so long. But it doesn't have to be that confusing. Just quantify the amounts and times and visits, and going to be here every week to cut the grass unless there's a drought. Going to be here 2 times to trim the bushes. It's very just 2 columns.
Right.
And the total is the total. Even if he makes a mistake and he doesn't add up his $1,900 worth of bush trimming, guess what? He's doing it for the $19,000, $700 total price tag.
Right.
It's not your fault. That's his fault, and he's going to have to eat that.
Right.
So that's just the way bids go. I've bid on jobs where I forgot to add in a chemical or bush trimming, and I got beat on it, but I had to do it anyway because it was my job it was part of the bid spec, and I missed it. So if someone misses something like that, they have to do it in the process. So that's and again, if you want me to mark up the bid spec, I'll do that for you, and I'll hand it to Mr. Gray or anyone up on the board.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions from public? See no hands. Is there a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Mr. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask another question?
Sure.
Also for Mr. Sarich, under flower and shrub planting, it says $25 per man hour, but it doesn't have did you have an estimated total, or maybe I'm not reading that correctly?
Like last year, we didn't do nothing. There's $25. They tell me what they want.
Okay.
Is that what we asked for, what the cost would be per hour? Or did we ask for a total?
Mr. Gray, how was it specified?
Last year,
With this?
we did receive per hour for this one, and other ones we did receive a dollar amount, so it was different across the board.
Yeah, okay.
One of the things that we were considering, if we do re-advertise this and rebid it, is to put in a total amount of flats for consideration in the bid.
Okay. All right. We're going with, as Mr. Dell was saying, per flat installed sounds might be even easier.
Mr. Chairman, it looks like Mr. Sarich's figure doesn't include the labor costs and doesn't include the shrub trimming.
Right, that was the labor cost. Obviously, it's tough you can't include it because you don't know how much it's going to be.
No, I understand it. He's saying he'll do the work for the number that he's put here.
Right. Mr. Clark, is this a matter that an executive session could be held on?
It's a matter of potential litigation, so if you would...
And that's what I'm thinking.
You award these bids as is, you might end up getting sued, so it could be a proper executive session, although board members could not indicate how they were going to vote one way or another during this executive session, but if they needed some counsel from me on the potential litigation of this, then it could be an executive session.
All right. Let's take a short break. All right, we'll call our meeting back to order. Mr. Clark, can we have a summary of our executive session, please?
Yes, Mr. Harvey, during the executive session, we discussed potential litigation involving the award of the 2011 landscaping services bid.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we've had quite a bit of board comment and public comment on this issue. At this point, is there a motion by...
I want to make one more comment if I can.
Sure, yeah.
I said it a little bit already. After last year, when Mr. Dell came to me, or came to us and told us that these bid specs were a mess, that it's impossible to bid. I think last year was the first year that this stuff went out to bid. There's no clarification on who wants what, when you're doing this. We had conversations about it, that the bid specs were going to be cleaned up, made clear as can be what you were bidding on. I saw Mr. Dell the day he picked up his bid specs and dropped off his financial statements. I was surprised he didn't bid on it. It's embarrassing, that this happened again this year, that we can't get this right. That's all I wanted to say about this.
Okay. All right. So we do have some bids, and obviously, as we've said, there are some issues with all three and assumptions that have to be made, I guess you could say. And we've had one of the bidders who was here this evening who talked a great deal about the process. All that being said, and with all the comments we've had, is there a motion at this point in terms of these particular bids with lawn care services for the Township of Falls for 2011?
I'll make a motion to approve Dawn to Dusk's bid for $19,713.37.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion seconded by Mr. Zupka. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolanski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Abstain. And Mr. Chairman, I need to abstain because one of the bidders is a business associate of mine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. So thank you for the people who came out this evening, and we'll look to make this a smoother process for next year. All right, item number 4 is consider awarding bids for 2011 lawn care services. Mr. Gray.
Yes, on March 28th at 11 a.m., Township employees opened and recorded the lawn care bids for 2011. After a review of the bids, Joe Arneo, Public Works Foreman, request the Board of Supervisors to give the bid to True Green with no exceptions in the amount of $16,300.
Okay. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zupka?
None.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
None.
Mr. Snipes?
True Green, I believe we used them last year, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dents?
No.
Okay, and I'll just mention that there were 2 companies that bid. The company that was the high bidder was almost twice as much in terms of the bid. So,
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. How does this bid compare to last year's bidding? Does anyone know?
It is, I don't have the exact dollar amount, but I believe it is similar to last year's.
I was just surprised at the higher bidder coming in at twice the amount. I wondered if there was, again, some kind of misunderstanding, but if the low bid is similar to last year's low bid and we were able to actually get the work done for that price, then it's clear.
okay. Is there any public comment needed? See no hands. All right, is there a motion then?
Make a motion to award the bid for lawn care to True Green in the amount of $16,300.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay, item number 5 on our agenda is consider awarding bids for 2011 summer camp bus services. Mr. Gray?
Yes, a sealed bid was opened by Township representatives on Friday, March 25th, regarding the summer camp bus services for 2011. This is the second time this item was authorized by the board for advertisement. No bids were received the first time for this item. The bid was received from First Student. Cost per trip per bus traveling 1 to 3 hours, plus return time is $180 per trip. Cost per trip per bus 4 to 6 hours, plus return time is $180, plus $50 for every hour after 3 hours. And cost per trip per bus from Manor Elementary to Pinewood Pool one way is $180. And that would be for the summer rec program for pool services. First Student provided the service last year for Falls Township. The fees are the same as the prior year. At this time, the board is asked to consider approval of this item. In addition, Mr. Reese, Director of Park and Recreation, is here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. All right. Mr. Reese, just give us an idea of some of the places. I was talking about going to the Pinewood Pool.
Yes.
But in terms of the other kinds of trips that summer camp goes on?
Yeah, well, let me just say, when we go to Pinewood Pool, we take usually between 5 and 6 buses, and we do that 6 times once a week. And then 1 bus stays and then brings the staff back. The parents pick the kids up at the pool, and then so we have 1 bus that stays. And then the other 4 weeks, we have a bus trip for each age group. So what we do is we put our 5, 6, and 7s go on a bus trip, our 8, 9, and 10s go on a bus trip, and our 11, 12, and 13s go on a bus trip. So we basically average 3 bus trips a week for 4 weeks. We go anywhere from to Camden Aquarium, we go bowling, sometimes we go to Doylestown Rock Gym, we go to laser tag. We have one big trip a year for everybody, which is one of the amusement parks, sometimes Hershey Park, sometimes Six Flags, things along that. But most of the trips are fairly close, within like a half hour or so of the school.
Okay. All right, so comments or questions for Mr. Reese or Mr. Gray regarding the summer bus services? Mr. Zupka?
None.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
None.
Mr. Snipes?
No.
Mr. Dents?
No.
And I have none. All right, is there any public comment needed? I see no hands. Okay, is there a motion then to award the summer camp bus services for 2011 to First Student using the costs submitted, or printed, I should say, in the March 25th memo?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded?
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dent?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Item 6 is consider authorizing advertisement of code amendment to Chapter 203, Section 39, subsection A, placement of containers, and Chapter 188, Section 26, maintenance and good repair. Mr. Gray.
Yes, as mentioned, this is just for authorizing advertisement purposes only. Again, this is for amendment to Chapter 203, Section 39, subsection A, the placement of the containers, and amendment to Chapter 188, Section 26, maintenance and good repair. Again, the board is asked to consider authorization for advertisement for this.
Okay. All right, and specifically what we're looking at with this amendment to our ordinance, or two of our ordinances, answering some of the concerns we've had from some residents regarding people who place specifically trash cans, trash bags, recycling, materials they're throwing away on sidewalks or on the corner ADA, ramps that you see on in almost every corner. So that what it does is it impedes people's ability to actually use the sidewalks or use those ramps, whether you're handicapped or you're pushing a baby in a stroller or you're riding a bike. They put their trash out and other types of things on those in those areas, and it blocks people's access and forces them to walk in the street, things like that. Our code does address some things in terms of placing, I think, trash cans, but I think this is more specific in terms of other kinds of materials that you can't place. You can't block sidewalks with this kind of thing. You can't block those corner ramps. They have to be open for people to use. And this is, again, just authorizing advertisement for this. We'll come back at another meeting and decide whether or not to approve these amendments. Comments or questions at this point for advertisement? Mr. Zupka?
None.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
None.
Mr. Snipes?
No.
Mr. Dents? No. I have none. Any public comment? See no hands. Okay, is there a motion then to approve advertisement to these two amendments?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Zupka.
Seconded.
Second, Mr. Dents. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item 7, consider adopting code amendment to Chapter 51, Section 6, Manager Township, powers and duties. Mr. Gray?
Yes, on March 1st, 2011, the board authorized advertisement for change to Chapter 51, Township Manager, Section 6, Powers and Duties. By making this change, it allows the board to ratify the local disaster emergency made by the manager at the next regularly scheduled Board of Supervisors meeting. The board is asked to consider adopting this ordinance change, this amendment.
The previous... Unfortunately, we've had to do this far too often, having the manager declare an emergency usually because of heavy snow. So hopefully we won't have to do it as much next winter or the winter after. But one of the issues with our current ordinance is that it says that if the manager declares a state of emergency, which he does in consultation with the chief of police and the fire marshal as well as public works director, if he does that, it's supposed to be ratified by the Board of Supervisors within, I think it's 7 days, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
I think just by some kind of weird, coincidence, all the storms we've had where that's happened have happened within 7 days of one of our meetings, and so it's never been an issue. But obviously, if there were to be a freak snowstorm, let's say, after one of our meetings, and then we didn't meet again for 2 weeks, we'd be in violation of our own ordinance, or we'd have to have a special meeting just to come together to authorize what Mr. Gray did and then, adjourn. And so this just merely changes it so that the language is that we would have to ratify it at the next regularly scheduled Board of Supervisors meeting. So it could just be a couple, adding a couple days, rather than having to sort of call a special meeting simply for one very brief thing and then disband. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zupka?
None.
Mrs. Kozlowski?
None.
Mr. Snipes?
No, it makes sense, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dents?
You think if we changed our meeting dates, it would stop snowing?
You want to try it? See what happens?
No, no comments. I'm only kidding.
All right. And I don't have any. Any public comment needed? See one hand. Is there a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Gray, this would be ordinance 11-01.
01.
Okay, I thought that was just the first one.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Gallo Sobert. On item 7, with the Code Amendment, Chapter 51, Section 6, Manager Township Powers and Duties. I've been in the township for 50-some years, and I'd like to ask, when was the last time that we did an amendment to Chapter 51 before we go any further? Does anybody have any idea? It seems, like we've been running along pretty well for 50-some years, and now all of a sudden we're going to change it. And I understand that you're just going to advertise to have it done, which means that a copy of this will be available.
No, this has already been advertised. This is adoption. We advertised this a month ago. We authorized advertisement a month ago.
Mr. Harvey, hold on just a second. These earphones are not working, and it's the only pair they have, so if I don't hear you, you understand. What I'm saying is, when are we going to be able to take a look at these proposed changes?
It was advertised a month ago, so you've had the ability for the past month to look at the change.
Okay. Well, I'd still like to come in and take a look and see what we're changing, that's for sure. Is it possible to put it on the website?
It's essentially, it's changing 8 words. It's merely saying instead of the township has 7 days to approve, it says at the next regularly scheduled Board of Supervisors meeting. That's the only change.
Don't put it on the website, it's not worth it.
Right.
That's for darn sure. Thank you.
That's what I thought. Okay. Any other comment needed? See no hands or motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we're looking at ordinance 11-1. Is there a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 11-1.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, next item on our agenda, item number 8, is consider a TrueMark agreement. Mr. Clark, I'll go to you to explain this.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Sometime earlier this year, the township, the county, and the school district were sued by TrueMark Financial under a section of the state code known as the refund law. TrueMark Financial had paid property taxes mistakenly to a Falls Township tax parcel number when it was really intended to be paid in another municipality. They mistakenly transmitted the money to our tax collector, who correctly dispersed the money to the county, the school district, and the township. When it was brought to our attention that the money had been paid improperly, the township refunded the money to TrueMark Financial, but the county and the school district did not do so immediately. A lawsuit was filed by TrueMark Financial against the county, the township, and the school district, and against an individual who was, I guess you could call him the beneficiary of the mistaken payment. In other words, this was the individual in Falls who had his property taxes paid by TrueMark Financial when they shouldn't have been paid by TrueMark Financial. The matter was, as I said, filed in the Bucks County Court of Common Pleas. We entered our defense, and there is now a resolution to this matter where the individual who was mistakenly paid, his property taxes were paid. He will pay TrueMark Financial back $4,600. He will pay the township back $1,348.25, which is the amount that we refunded to TrueMark Financial, and the matter will be resolved. I'm asking that the board approve this settlement agreement and general release between TrueMark Financial, Bucks County, Falls Township, and Ron Howard.
Okay. All right, comments or questions from board members? Mr. Zupka?
No, none.
Mrs. Wozlowski?
I don't know how a mistake like that can occur. Someone was sleeping because all the Falls Township tax parcels begin with the number 13. And certainly, the recipient of the bill who paid the money to the wrong municipality should have been alert enough. And if he was sleeping at the switch, then our tax collector should have seen that that was not the correct, handling of that thing. I'm wondering who's going to pay for the legal fees for a mistake that was not ours. But that's just a comment. I just don't know how it happened. Certainly didn't under Jan Veslowski's watch. She collected taxes for 16 years without making a mistake as egregious as that.
Well, while in the settlement agreement, there's no admission of liability on anyone's part, the individual whose property taxes were mistakenly paid in Falls also has TrueMark Financial as his.
Who paid your bill for a thing that we didn't need?
Mrs. Wozlowski, you asked Mr. Clark not to interrupt you. Please don't interrupt him when he's
I know,
speaking.
but he
Mrs.
always
Wozlowski,
interrupts. He thinks he's running the township. I resent it very much.
That's fine.
People didn't like him, and they didn't vote for him.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
TrueMark made the mistake. They paid, as you can imagine, many of these bills are paid electronically by the mortgage company. They sent us, or they sent our tax collector, a tax bill with a payment when it was really intended for a property, I believe, in Northampton. But they sent it along with the tax parcel number for Falls Township. The tax collector received the money and dispersed the money consistent with what the three taxing bodies are supposed to receive, and it was only after the fact that TrueMark discovered the problem. When the problem was discovered, Falls refunded the money immediately. The county and the school district did not, but then they did when they agreed to this when it was brought to their attention.
Okay.
I shouldn't say the school district, because it was determined that the school district, although they were originally sued, didn't receive any disbursement. It was just the county.
Okay.
So they actually paid someone's taxes in Falls Township. There was no error. It was a mistake on their part.
Right.
So somebody in Falls Township that had their taxes paid
For free.
for free.
Correct, and that is why Mr. Howard, who is agreeing to reimburse TrueMark Financial. And
Understood. And Mr. Howard's the person whose taxes were paid?
Yes. And
This isn't the Ron Howard, this is just a Ron Howard.
I don't believe it is the Ron Howard, but he is reimbursing TrueMark Financial, and he is reimbursing the township.
So when the payment came in, I guess it just seemed like a normal payment. It was the right tax number, just in the wrong, they sent it to the wrong.
Right.
And I believe that is what occurred.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Mr.,
asked the question, who
In terms of
paid
legal fees?
our solicitors legal fees for a mistake that we certainly aren't responsible for? The man who made the mistake and sent the bill to the wrong place should reimburse him. I don't want my money to go to him.
Okay. Mr. Snipes, comments or questions?
Seems pretty straightforward, unfortunate mistake, but it seems to be cleared up, so that's good.
Okay. Any public comment needed? See no hands. All right, is there a motion then to approve the TrueMark agreement as presented to us this evening?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the settlement agreement and general release involving TrueMark Financial Credit Union.
Mr. Is there a motion, or is there a second?
Second the motion.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right, move on to public comment. Mr. Gray is retrieving the list here of people who signed in for public comment. Remind residents or people who wish to
I
speak
need to sign it.
to speak for 5 minutes at a time, and we'll have a 45-minute maximum. Okay. First name on the list is Mr. Kenny? Gone. Okay. Mr. Kraus, you're up.
I made a request. I wish to sign the speaker's list.
I have your initials there. I'll call you.
I don't want you initialing for me. I sign my own things.
Hi, everybody. This is Joe Kraus from Fawlseyton. I got actually two things I want to talk about tonight. I don't know if I can be only limited to the 5 minutes because of the two things, but the one has to do with, again, energy. Okay? Now, we do have the Gamesa plant in Falls Township, but the other wind energy with the turbines that they're going to use at the Eagles is actually a different animal. It doesn't need, it's not as bulky, and it may be able to put it on lighter buildings. Okay? I just leased a property in Falls Township of a business. One of the first things I did was I told the landlord, I said, well, you know, I don't want to have the gas, and I don't want to have the 5-ton air conditioner, because that puts people out of business. Because they're old roof units, they get too hot, they cause too much energy, it puts small business people out of business, okay? So I had to go, like, before we get the fire marshal, because the fire marshal has to make sure that your heater's working all right, Pico's going to shut off the gas and lock it up, okay? So this way, I'll heat the building in a greener way. And I'll also use greener lighting inside than the fluorescent tubing like we have in here, okay? And it should be pretty interesting because it's actually going to be an old-fashioned toy store, but it's going to have bicycles and tricycles and models and planes. So anyhow, that's one idea, okay? The thing is I'm going to research and see if there's a way, but the thing somebody told me about is that if we do something like this in Falls Township and we take the existing building and we put something like a smaller system on it, okay, because all you need is high ground for this. And actually where I'm going to be located, there's a roof hatch that goes up to the roof, and I'm on high ground. And you have the, you know, the train yard, and you have Tyburn Road, and there's a lot of places in Falls Township where you can pick up wind, okay? The thing is with ordinances in the township of putting stuff on roofs, we have to see exactly, you know, maybe to modify down the road to be able to put wind energy on the roofs, okay? I think it's Mr. Harvey said he thought maybe they were going to build these things down in the KYZ in the Navy Yard. Well, the only thing that I found out that's down in the Navy Yard and still hasn't been done is they have a solar panel farm going in, and that's it. That's the only thing that's going in there. Most KOIZ tracks, like the Johnsville Naval Air Station, all there's some stuff that's occupied, but a lot of it's like ghost towns. It's the economy, but we have to get things going that Falls Township will stay number one. When the landfill's gone, we're still going to have host community fees from other means. We're going to bring new businesses into Falls Township and still be number one in the area. Now, the second thing I got to talk about is I believe all the supervisors, they got a video. Did you get yours, Dorothy, about the zoo?
We got a letter about it. I don't think we've got
There was a DVD attached.
The only item that went in was the letter.
Yeah.
The video did not go in this packet. It'll go in this week's packet.
Yeah.
This was a large packet that went out.
Wanted to sort of leave the video out only because we want to cause a confusion in terms of thinking it was something on this agenda.
Okay.
That kind of, you know, but.
All right. Well, basically, the Bucks County has a zoo. The zoo's looking for a place to grow. Jack Hanna is one of the big donators of getting baby animals to the zoo. Right now they're in a warehouse and they're out by Mears Road and Bristol Road in that general area. And they're only open basically one day a week. But what they do is, in the meantime, during schools, they take the animals to schools. They have baby animals. They got a kangaroo that's about this big. They got a baby white lion. And when, if you read that letter, they were actually on the David Letterman show, okay, on Monday night, because that's as soon as the thing happened with the cobra that got loose, they got on it. CBS got on it right away, and the next thing you know, they called me up and said, hey, and I said, good, I'm just typing up this thing. I want to make sure that everybody knows to watch the show, because our former police officer, Joe Fortunato, okay, is the guy that runs kind of like the zoo up there, okay? And we could take what's right there now and only use and have it in less than the space of a soccer field, okay? One soccer field. But you have the other quarries and stuff. If you look at the Cape May Zoo, it's the same thing. It's a non-profit thing. They had these areas that to get to the other areas, you got to build ramps and you put stuff on it, and you could do that over the highways. So that you could use the quarries on the other side to get some, but it helped fill them in with some dirt, and you could have animals over there grazing. And you could have an attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And that attraction will attract new business. I've even talked to one company that has they have a restaurant chain, and they'd be interested maybe in coming up and building something off of Tyburn Road, maybe even on the KOZ track if they could, okay? But again, we have to see where this goes.
Right.
Okay? And the thing is, it's a great opportunity for Falls Township. Having a zoo here is an attraction. Anything that we can bring in the Falls Township in the future, okay, will bring more commerce, more money to the people in the area, more money to the people of the adjoining townships. And that's what we got to do. We got to look at the future. And the future is not wait until the landfill's full. The future is start working on it now.
Okay.
And maybe you know, what they have is they have a board, and the board has to approve whoever's going to get it, but the zoo's going to stay in Bucks County. Now, whether, you know, the best thing is I think our township has at least the area, the space, and everything to add to it. And it's just another thing for the community park to start it in there. So, I don't know, it's up to you guys. Where do you want to go from here?
Okay. All right, we'll take a look at the letter. Like I said, Mr. Gray's going to send that video out this weekend to the board members to take a look
this way,
at.
the next time we can, you know, maybe even have some animals here, you know, baby animals. They got like
No snakes.
Well,
We don't need snakes.
Okay. Well,
Spiders, we don't need spiders either.
well, they don't have any spiders. Okay.
All right.
But we'll look into it. Okay, guys.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Krause.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I've been to the Cape May County Zoo several times. It's actually very, very impressive for a free zoo. It's not too far from Wildwood. All right, next on the list is Jim Major.
How you doing? Hi. We're going to revisit the tower tonight. This is going to take more than 5 minutes. I understand that they made an agreement with Lower Bucks Joint Municipal Authority.
Yes.
And Mr. Snipes, Mr. Kenner was never contacted. Like, not that he was promised, but you took his phone number down. Nobody contacted him. So whatever this deal was to bring down the tower, from what I heard from the meeting, I don't feel like I'm going to be safe, and I'm going to touch on the safety. I'm going to bring back up the pictures that I showed you at the first board meeting. Bring this whole thing up here. Okay. The first one shows the fire. I think you had asked about the fire. You can pass them around, look at them. There's the paint. Sorry, there's the paint. This is actually the metal. Okay, if you want to open that up and blow it around the room, because that's what's being done on my property. This is dust. It's not metal. It's dust. This is hazardous. Okay, not safe. I breathe this in every day. you didn't see the wire.
No.
Okay, that was in my backyard. Okay, now I'm stressing safety. Okay, if you allow this tower to be cut up, I don't care how big the portions are, okay, you're going to get hot molten flame blowing across the road. And I do have the wind reports for you, Mr. Clark. You said it was only windy on one day. Wind reports say that it was windy 7 out of the 9 days that they were there, with gusts up to 57 miles an hour. I believe that's enough to blow it over my house, onto the street, onto the adjacent properties. Okay. What they're proposing with Lower Bucks Joint Municipal Authority is just ridiculous. You're compromising my family's safety, my neighbor's safety. Okay, you made a deal with the devil, basically. I'm not happy about this. Okay. Not only that, but by allowing them to do that, okay, you have a nuisance law. Okay, this is a state law, but it's also a local law. They're breaking the nuisance law, the noxious odor law. Okay, they're breaking that. So, in other words, what you're saying is yeah, you can take it down. We're going to let you break our local laws to do this. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is why we vote you in, okay, to represent us, to make sure that these laws are abided by. Okay, you can't make this deal with Lower Bucks County Joint Municipal Authority on my family's behalf, because you're putting me at just as much risk as it was from the get-go. I have there was 2 more chapters or laws that you wrote in. One was industrial accidents, which requires the township to send township employees in to clean up.
You ready?
Nobody showed up to my house to even do this except anybody that I've hired. Hazardous substance. Okay, it's another that's chapter 139 was written in with. Let me put my glasses on. This pertains to extremely hazardous substance or just hazardous chemicals. I also heard at last week's meeting that from the township engineer that this stuff is not hazardous. I have material safety data sheets, and I don't know if you guys got this information, okay? I have hazardous safety or material safety hazard, whatever they're called, the data sheets for the paint, okay? And I got the data sheets for the new paint that was put on 15 years ago. And I got the data sheets for the paint that was put on prior to that. There seems to be a little bit of conflict as far as actually what the paint is. But I assure you, I went to Lower Bucks Joint Municipal Authority, and they opened their files up for me. That's how I obtained my information. Okay, so this stuff came right from their files. One chip I was very impressed with was the actual color of the paint. It was called robotic paint. When I Googled that and came up with the material safety data sheet, that stuff, it has silica in it. Okay, I think I talked about that during the first meeting now.
Silica?
Silica.
So that's sand.
It's
silica
quartz.
is sand.
Quartz. Yes, yes. It's,
Okay.
I guess it's like a hardening. I'm not a chemical engineer.
Yeah.
I'm just bringing up stuff because when you read about stuff, you know, when it becomes a dust is when it's hazardous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, surely you see the material that I placed in front of you. That all that metal that I'm collecting, it's dust.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere. If you look at some of them pictures very closely, that is
Where are
all dust.
Mr. Snipes was looking at them.
It's, you know, it's not going away. You know, my own insurance company, you know, when I talked to them, I said, look, you need to come out and clean my home up, clean my property up. I said, because I'm getting sick on a daily basis. They went as far as they hired a forensic engineer who has a PhD and a PE. He's part of a team. It's a nationwide team that comes in for exposures and spills and so forth, and they're evaluating it. They pass all the information on to my insurance company. Here's a list of OSHA's hazardous materials, and from what I heard at the last board meeting, that none of this was hazardous.
Well, these are materials that are on that tank. This is just
Yes.
an alphabet. This is an alphabetical.
That's an
list
alphabetical order of hazardous
all,
materials.
of every hazardous material, like ever.
Correct.
So, like, which of these are on the tank?
I highlighted some of them. I got tired of highlighting them because it appears that everything that was in the paints was in this, is in that list. Now we're concerned about them cutting through it, which makes it a dust. Also, I want to bring to your attention that I did get the OSHA analyst report, and I don't know if you were shown this. Okay, they took a chunk of the tower, and in this report it states that the center of that tower is lead contaminated. It mentions that 2 times in this report, that the center of that tank is lead contaminated. Now,
where is this report from?
This is OSHA report.
And it's on this tank particularly?
It's on this tank.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have a copy of that, Mr. Sullivan? We have a copy of that
I do not.
report?
No.
Okay. All right. So if you could,
See that?
if you could provide a copy with of us for us with that, I mean, it's certainly something we can.
I can provide a copy, but I had thought that last meeting he stated that he viewed all the material.
We'd be happy to make a copy of that right now, Mr. Major.
Yeah, Mr. Gray can. There's a copy machine right behind this wall. Mr. Clark can make Mr. Gray make a copy of that for us.
I can give you the win record as well.
Mr. Major, I think the last time you were here, excuse me, just the last time you were here, I think you had mentioned some issues with the doctors you had visited and toxins that you had been exposed to, and I think Mr. Clark had asked you for if you could be able to forward some of that information to him.
I did. We spoke over email. Unfortunately, we couldn't come to an agreement. He wanted me to sign a HIPAA form. I can't sign a HIPAA form. He wanted to talk to the doctors about my medical condition. When we left this meeting, okay, he was supposed to talk to this doctor about the health hazards that were presented in my backyard.
Right.
And then it got changed around a little bit, and because I wasn't represented by attorney, I wasn't going to sign something without the permission of attorney.
And that's fine, but and obviously the only way Mr. Clark can talk to your doctor about things that you've been exposed to is for your doctor to be able to discuss your issues. Obviously, the doctor's in a tough spot. He or she can't talk about anything, and it's impossible for Mr. Clark to gather the information. I mean, I understand you're perfectly within your rights, and I understand the privacy issues. That's okay. I wanted to see if you were able to share that with us, but obviously, okay, we weren't able to get that.
Okay. In the OSHA report, they did identify manganese fume. Okay, and as they're cutting through this tower, and keep in mind, in the beginning of this cutting of this tower, we were all. I was in my home. I don't want to say we all. I was working from home. Mr. Kenner, his wife, his grandson, who's 2, were in their homes. We could have been out in the backyards. The odor was horrible. Okay. I don't want to assume that it was the manganese fume, but it says clearly that manganese fume is coming from this tower, as well as iron oxide fume. Okay, they're both listed on that hazardous chemical list. All the other chemicals that they were testing, okay, they were below limits, so they don't report the actual number. Okay, but certainly in that report, it does say that the center of that tank is lead contaminated. I'm concerned about that. Not only for my own family, but I know for a fact on the other side of Vermilion, and I'm glad the winds blow my way, because there's kids that live 3 houses from that tower. Okay, grandkids. I don't want to mention their name, but these are small children, and that's what they're concerned about with lead is what it can do to a child or a pregnant woman. Okay, not saying it couldn't affect me in any way, or or an elderly person and so forth, but. The information's there. It's all there. I offered the information to Mr. Clark. He said he had all the material safety data sheets, so he didn't want them.
One of the things I'm looking at too, looking at this, is I'm assuming there's some pretty ordinary things on here. And nitrogen is listed as a hazardous chemical, but obviously most of the air we're breathing right now is nitrogen.
Right, correct.
So ammonia obviously is hazardous, but of course we clean our houses with ammonia. It all depends on levels. What level does it become hazardous? Did any of the reports you have indicate what levels of these 10 items you've highlighted are actually being released, or is it just the fact that they're there? So
no,
it could be incredibly small amounts, is my point.
Well, they weren't. I guess the point I'm trying to make is when you're cutting through this tower and you're making it dust, well, how are you going to know what level it is? When OSHA took a piece of the tower, they gave him an outer section. Now there are pictures. There's pictures in the file from down at Lower Bucks Joint Municipal Authority, and in the same report, in the OSHA report, Lower Bucks Joint Municipal Authority, they claimed that this tower was stripped. It wasn't stripped. I was there. I lived there. There's outer columns on this tower. Okay, they were stripped. Just those outer columns. The center was never stripped. They simply just they power washed it, okay, and continued to put another 2 layers of paint on that. Now the layer of paint that I believe is the correct layer, which I found in their file. Give me a second here. Did I leave you all the material safety data sheets up there?
Yes. Yeah, we have them here, I'm sorry, yes.
Paint.
For their paint, basically, just a different paint. So the hazards essentially are, inhalation of vapor or spray mist when it's being applied, basically, like anybody knows in terms of the use we're looking for.
Yeah.
In terms of, you're spray painting or something, you don't want to do it in a closed environment because of you don't want to breathe anything in. So, but, all right, in terms of what we have, what did we get in terms of information from Lower Bucks Joint, Mr. Clark, regarding the materials on the tank or what the tank's made of, et cetera?
I believe that Mr. Sullivan and his office received all of the material safety data sheets. We also received the sheets from the Department of Environmental Protection when they issued their original 2 permits. The one regarding asbestos and the one regarding it's a water service permit. And those were the documents that we had that were reviewed.
Okay, OSHA was out there at some point to close down the project, is that correct?
OSHA was out there, apparently, from what we're seeing here, from what we were told before, because the contractor was not having its employees follow its written respirator program when they were using the torches to cut the tank.
Okay.
The way I'm reading it, it doesn't say they weren't using respirators. It says the employer didn't have a written program.
Right.
It says that they were using respirators.
And
they weren't labeled. The respirators weren't labeled properly. They didn't know if they were using the proper labeling of the respirators. Still, OSHA protects the employees.
Right.
I was
They weren't
grateful
fined.
enough to be able to get this report, which gave us a lot more information because they were telling us that the tower was stripped. It was not. They're telling us that there's no lead on it. There is lead on it, and there's reports.
Where do we know there's lead? I'm sorry.
I didn't get there yet.
You didn't get to that part yet? That there's lead?
The contractor actually admits in the report that he knows the control room and the center of the tank where the control room is at is lead contaminated. Okay, and certainly by coming in there and cutting this thing up, you're going to send lead dust everywhere.
Assuming
even if they did strip some of it, you're not going to get it all.
I'm assuming it's lead just from old paint. Is that where it's coming from, or it's lead?
No.
No, it's actually.
I don't know. It doesn't say.
Doesn't say.
It's just potential exposure to
potential exposure to lead. Okay. All right, we can certainly, I mean, obviously, we have some information, and we can give this information to Mr. Sullivan. He can take a look at it. As far as we know, I guess the process at this point, Lower Bucks Joint is waiting for the contractor to come back. There's an issue with the one permit they had to file, which is basically not about safety. It was about essentially taking a water tank, existing water tank offline. DEP needs to have a permit, and it was a limited permit, right, Mr. Clark, time-wise?
There are 2 permits they need from DEP. One involves taking a tank off of line. DEP needs to give a permit anytime a tank that is part of an approved and regulated water system is taken offline. It's merely an administrative permit, so DEP knows that that tank will no longer exist in the Lower Bucks Joint system. The second one involves levels of asbestos, and again, they are time-limited permit, so the fact that it expired does not mean that the DEP has any concerns about there being a high level of asbestos. They previously issued the permit, and all indications are they're going to issue the permit again.
Okay. All right, so I think the timeline, because we were asking when exactly the tank is, the work's supposed to be completed or started again, I guess.
I was told the 18th.
Late April, yeah, something like that. Right.
I called Lower Bucks, and they told me they were going to be back the 18th. However, that tank needs to be canvassed.
Well, that gives us time, obviously, to take a look at the materials you presented us, and if we find anything that sort of raises flags for us, and we appreciate you bringing it in, then we can certainly make our feelings clear that this has to be done maybe in a different way. Again, the information we had so far, the laws are being followed, and now at least, and the tank is going to come down in probably a better way than it was before. But and maybe if there's something else in here that you provided us that gives us more information that we can make this even safer, I would encourage you, and I see Mr. Kenner is also here, and all the residents over there, if there is any more instances of debris that's flying, like happened when this first thing came down, to contact the township immediately, and Mr. Gray knows, and Mr. Bennett knows from code enforcement that obviously this is be something that we'll have somebody out there, and probably even have somebody out there watching.
Yes,
even
I was going to say that.
They were going to be out there
Yeah,
when.
that's right.
From Mr. Sullivan's office as well as somebody from code enforcement.
right. I've forgotten that
Babysitting
part. They're
gonna be
this
out
whole
there this time?
They're going to be babysitting the whole procedure.
Right, I'd forgotten about that part. I apologize. I'd forgotten about that part of the agreement.
you didn't
that
do
we're
that
going to have
the
somebody at that.
So you're going to promise that then, because we didn't get that the first time. They sent us away and told us it was a civil matter.
I know, but I've been listening.
They went in the beginning.
I want to know how this started,
Well-
because you'd have never done it near my house.
You're right. They got all their permits. They had all the permits required.
Right.
When Mr. Major came to us the first meeting, when they were in the middle of cutting it, and
Another one of our stupid mistakes. Their right to swing their fist ends where your nose starts. And you have a right to enjoy your home without having your family in jeopardy. And I say that 1,000%.
Thank you.
Mr. Wire, keep that as your
Oh, yeah, I
exhibit,
need that.
too.
Yep.
I have to apologize
So bags
to
here,
you,
too.
because I would have fought this right from the get-go. I was trapped in Florida. If you read the paper, it looks like I was down there having a happy vacation. There were no planes coming north, and that's why I was not here. I went down for 2 weeks. I had bought a home down there, and I was going to be spending my retirement. Well, the home's gone. The roof got blown off of it 5 days ago. A tornado hit it. Tell me about wind, sir.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that this was not anything that should have happened in the manner that it did. Now, I had 2 heart attacks. I couldn't get home. I was down there 3.5 months, and people still do not know. Well, they know now because I'm telling them. I was not down there enjoying sunny Florida. I was down there quite ill. And I would have been here, and I feel guilty because I wasn't here to stop that. I've seen examples of the kind of conditions that you're living under. And when they say, oh, well, it's only paint, back in those days, they used lead-based paint. And go cutting that up and having those swirls of dust breathed by your family would not be a very safe thing. So I'm just quite angry about it. And you saw too much stupidity tonight, even our bidding, in the way we did our parks and trimming, stuff like that. We don't get the right experts to do the things. We'd rather give our money to the pay-to-play guys for things that aren't necessary. And I apologize to you for not being here because it happened on my watch. I'm a member of this board. But you may come to my house. I live right beside the gazebo in Falsington. It has a front porch, red brick building. You can ring my doorbell anytime. I'm there.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Major, you want to take back your stuff?
Yeah.
Mr. Snipes, you had a question?
Yes, so do we have a better picture of what when they begin work again, their dismantling process will look like? Are they tarping, or are there new precautions?
Mr. Clark, you want to talk about the agreement that was made?
They're going to take the tank down in sections. They're going to take it down in larger sections. When it is on the ground, they are going to erect a 6 to 8 foot enclosure where they will be cutting the larger pieces into smaller pieces. Mr. Major shows you a photograph. He says there's a fire on the ground. That's actually them using the blow torches on the ground to cut up some pieces of the tank. And as you can imagine, when there are some things on the ground, there's sometimes some ground cover that catches fire. But they will also be monitoring the wind. We'll have Mr. Sullivan's office out there. We'll have someone from Mr. Bennett's office out there. There'll be wind monitoring. If the wind goes above a certain speed, Lower Bucks Joint has agreed to stop cutting until that time. So those are some of the precautions that are going to be taken.
Giving us an idea of how many days it takes to take down what's left?
Well,
provided weather's good, no wind, that kind of thing.
They've essentially told us that it should probably take less than a week to 10 days to take down the remainder of the tank. A great portion of the tank the tank part itself is already down, and then after that is down, they have to take down the superstructure, the legs, and those things that are holding it up.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sir, here's my telephone number. I know you'll be watching what they're doing. My address is on this envelope as well. I don't care when you call me. If you don't like what you see, get me over there.
Okay, I will do that. All right, in conclusion, I want to see the water tower taken down as much as anyone else here. Many of us have voted the members of the board to represent us as a whole in the township. What responsibilities will be taken to ensure our safety and to protect our homes and personal properties during the process of the demolition of the water tower? I think you just addressed that. I'm still not happy about they're not going to canvas this thing off, because you saw the damage that it has done to my property, okay? And I will be present. I will be home, okay? If I got to stand out in my backyard with a fire hose, but I'll be wearing a regulator mask, like I was told. Personally, I think it's a joke that we're allowing this company to break our own rules here. I pointed those 4 rules out: the noxious odors, the nuisance law. Those are laws. Those are laws. Why are we letting them break them?
They're not breaking any laws. They're complying with all the laws and regulations of the township.
So allowing a noxious odor to leak.
They have a right to take the tank down.
Their right to swing their fist ends where your nose starts.
Okay, so
don't listen to him.
So, in my conclusion, this comes down to political. They're selling the property, and it'll be redeveloped, and it'll go through their office, and this office will get a chunk of change.
We don't know if they're selling it or not, Mr. Major.
From what I understand, it already is.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be coming through here again.
All right.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Obert.
Thanks.
Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. Gallus Obert. I had an old saying that was given to me. It says, the most consistent thing about some people, organizations, and government is their inconsistency. And sometimes that sure does apply here. If you remember, last month I made a comment about the boat ramp and the lights and so forth, and the 13 lights, and the boat ramp of the park is supposed to be closed at sunset or dusk and so forth. And if you're going to close it before the nighttime comes in, why do you need the lights? And then came a comment that, well, we're considering leaving the boat ramp open 24 hours. Gee, that sure solves the problem. But why don't we leave the dog park open 24 hours? Why don't we leave the skateboard park open 24 hours? And how about the, oh boy, why doesn't everything stay open 24 hours, not just the boat ramp? Then comes along, and this is another issue of mine, and I've asked about it a couple times, and Mr. Harvey gets a little bit concerned because I keep bringing it up and up and up, and that's the sidewalks from on New Falls Road. and so forth. But the sidewalks on New Falls Road had 4 different plans and figures, if I remember. Is that correct, Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Yeah, and so forth. And I don't know whether Mr. Sullivan is aware, but I'm sure he is. He's a qualified engineer. But you have to take in consideration what is called the hazardous walking routes for people that go to school. And apparently the sidewalks are going to be for use for the kids to go in school instead of walking in the road. But if you look at I think there's 9 pages on it, on hazardous walking routes, you wouldn't put a sidewalk on New Falls Road to save your butt. That's all there is to it. That's the issues that I had for tonight. And I just get tired of hearing the same thing over and over and over, just like you guys do too. You hear it over and over and over. And I appreciate the gentleman that spoke before me and his endeavor to try and get something done. And I know that the plan probably is maybe not original, but it starts to be, well, if we keep stonewalling, delaying, and so forth, this guy will go away. I hope he doesn't go away because there's something wrong. Okay, let's make it happen, kids. I call you kids because you're all younger than me. That's for darn sure. Okay, and
I'm younger than you.
I'm sorry.
I'm not younger than you.
Oh, one other thing that's coming up in about 6 weeks, and that's something that's very important to all of us in our country, and that's the primary votes. All I'm asking for you people to do is be careful who you pick for, vote for. You may not like what you get, that's for sure. And that's, I think, May 17th. It's on Tuesday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tom Kenner?
Good evening. Tom Kenner, Falls Township. I know it's getting late, so I'll just read this statement and maybe we'll all get out of here. For 49 years, I never attended a Falls Township meeting, and now this is my 3rd meeting in the last 4 months, all related to the water tower. My reason for being at these meetings were concerns of health-related issues for my family and myself. I have allergies to mold, mildew, pollen, and dust, which I take medication for every day. When my allergies went into bronchitis from the dust from that water tank, I became very concerned. When the tower was built, I had a television antenna on my roof. It destroyed my TV reception. My line of thinking was, what is more important, a water supply or TV reception? When the tower was painted, I had an above-ground pool in my yard for my family. The paint that came off the tower covered the pool, destroying my liner and filter. I did nothing about it. Approximately 15 years ago, the tower was painted again. The paint specks were on my siding and property. Again, I said and did nothing. I didn't attend the last meeting, but I did watch it a couple of times on TV. Mr. Clark made a couple of statements that really annoyed me, and I quote, I hope I'm quoting correctly. Only one time did any debris leave the work site, and that was because the demolition crew worked on a very windy day. I don't know where you got that information, but that was false. I did not lie, nor did I exaggerate the fact that I had heavy dust and paint chips on my property from day one of the demolition. I only have a high school education, but you don't even need that to have common sense. The ground at the tower base is higher than the roof of my house. And to think that all that dust and debris is going to just float straight down to the ground is totally ridiculous. The demolition on that very windy day only carried the debris much further into the neighborhood. The second statement about the tower being taken down with any kind of covering over it is back to the beginning with all the problems. And if this is going to happen, why was it ever stopped in the beginning? I'm not looking for any profit in any way from this mess. But on the other hand, I won't accept any more losses from it either. and I certainly will be very happy when it's finally gone and my property cleaned up. When the sun is shining on my property, you can see glistening of metal on the ground. I spoke to the municipal authority, and Mr. Rasput assured me that it would be taken care of. I don't know how they're going to get those little specks of metal off my property. If this project was all done within the township codes, it may be time to look into some changing of the codes to protect the citizens and the environment of Falls Township from happening again. It seems to me like the big fish get away with what they want, and the little fish don't have a chance. As an example, a few years ago, I was putting a small shed in my yard for tools and storage. I was just leveling the ground as to where I was going to put the shed. The code enforcer came into my yard and asked what I was doing. When I told him, he said I was in violation of the codes as it was 8 inches too close to my home on my property. I had to go before the zoning board. I paid the $100 fee. I had to notify all my neighbors as to what I was doing. When the shed was finished, I had to call to have it inspected before I could put anything in it. All this for a small shed on my own property. I never received any kind of notice about the building, the painting, or the demolition of something as large as a water tower. My question to the board is, what is the job of the environmental officer? I'm not here to shoot anybody down, but when he told me he couldn't do anything about the debris coming off the water tower because it wasn't a township project, what exactly does that mean? I'd like you to answer that for me.
I'll tell you the answer. Common sense is not so common, and you have become my hero tonight. That's why I'm so noisy at town meetings, because you're doing what everybody ought to be doing. And I thank you for coming, and that other gentleman has my telephone number. If you see anything you don't like, I'm a good troublemaker.
Thank you, Mrs. Vislowski. When this tower mess is finally over and done with, I may not have to attend another meeting for another 49 years.
Stick around. Stick around.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kenner.
Thank you.
I know you answered a lot of the questions with Jim being up here.
Yeah.
But my concern is my property
Right.
being safe for my family, my grandchildren, and the sparklies that are all over the ground. I just want it taken care of.
And it's something, again, we obviously apologize for you having to go through any of this. And certainly it's one thing to fill out a permit application and say you're going to do things the right way, and then it's a different thing to actually do it the right way. And that was one of the problems here in terms of Lower Bucks Joint. And it was one of the reasons why we stopped them from continuing. We have to operate on the information we have available and the information given to us. I think in terms of the comment Mr. Clark made about the debris that was flying, that was information he had gotten from Lower Bucks Joint. I don't know, but so we're conscious of what they're doing. You heard a lot of the things the steps we're going to be taking to make sure that there is somebody, at least 2 people from the township, one from the engineer's office, one from code enforcement, watching them do whatever they're doing, and with the ability to shut them down on a moment's notice once they see anything going wrong.
But I have to tell you that without covering it, it doesn't even have to be a windy day. Nothing's going to just float straight down to the ground from something that high up. And that's what the problem is. It's just coming over, whether it's a windy day, non-windy day, it's just worse when the wind is stronger.
Okay. All right.
Sir, you and I will talk again. I can think of a remedy for you, and don't just let this thing get out of hand. I mean it when I say contact me. I will
Get a big tarp
come.
and cover my property? Is that what you're going to tell me?
Do what, dear?
Get a big tarp and cover my whole property?
Well, some people are thinking that's the remedy too. I have different remedies. I use common sense.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Kenner, thank you. Andy Dell?
Just a thought on the tower issue. Can they bring a larger crane in here, top that thing down, and bring the majority of the cutting down to the ground? because the elevation of this project seems to be the issue of the project. Not the fact that they're cutting up, but is there any way to, basically like topping a tree? Can you cut that thing down halfway, crane it down onto the ground and cut it up on the ground as opposed to 80 feet in the air?
I'm not aware. I'm not sure. I guess it depends obviously on the company they've hired and their abilities and equipment, I think.
Andy, not with this topography the way the last speaker described it. You know, it's a serious problem. I think it's a good suggestion if it were flat.
Well, I
But
saw
it's
it
not
has
over
quite
there.
a slope, but I know the outriggers on all these cranes are obviously fairly adjustable. I didn't know how heavy that unit was, and I don't know how big of a crane you need to bring in there, but I thought if they did, even if they brought a decent-sized crane and cut it up in thirds and dropped it on the ground, but did more of the cutting, per se, on the groundwork level, as opposed to going up there and taking small pieces down. Take down 3 or 4 large pieces, put it down on the ground, then you could work with tarps around you.
I think their intention is to bring down the largest piece they can, I think, with the equipment they have.
Okay.
So they are looking to do, and then, as Mr. Clark said, cut it into smaller pieces at that lower elevation.
Correct.
Inside that containment area.
Okay. Second question I had is about the police patrol cars. Did we ever get those cars that we have sitting here outfitted with the computers and the roll bars and
I think we just went out to bid on that, didn't we? So we haven't, bids haven't come in yet, or have they come in yet?
They're not due till, I believe, the 14th of April.
Yeah, so.
And my understanding is that we had a person that was doing this, fairly local guy, but he didn't meet certain criteria. And, you guys had taken certain cars out of service, and now they're not short cars, but they're using the cars they have more because they don't have the cars that they need back in service. So it's basically like anything else. You use it and use it and use it, and the car doesn't ever shut down. You're going to go through cars a lot faster that way.
The equipment we're buying is for the new vehicles, or?
It had to do with the price and the quantity we were doing at one time.
Yeah, it's vehicles that we haven't even gotten in yet, right?
3 Crown Victorias and 2 Tahoes.
No, we have the vehicles.
We have the vehicles, but
What was the reason we had to go out to bid with this?
the price.
Because we
It's
were
over
doing so many
10,000.
vehicles at once.
You weren't doing one at a time, you were doing
Right.
quantity.
We couldn't just.
Right.
Exactly. We had to go
But
out
my
to bid.
understanding is, from talking to a lot of the officers, is a lot of these dealers are in Connecticut and in faraway places. So if you guys have an issue with the equipment, how are you going to get this warranty work done by a guy who's
I
far away?
understand. The law is the law, though. Mr. Clark, right?
Law is the law. It's over $10,000. It has to be publicly bid.
And now what if you did each vehicle individually?
That attempt to bypass the public bidding statutes is illegal.
Oh, okay.
That was the problem.
You can't break a job down into, you can't break an identical job down into
5 separate jobs.
5 separate jobs in order to,
Can you take into account, though, the travel time necessary to repair or do maintenance on this equipment? Being if you ship someone in from Connecticut every time the police car is broken versus taking it 10 minutes away?
No.
we don't know anything about Connecticut. I don't know where.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, maybe 2 hours away or 3 hours away.
I don't even think we've received bids on this yet.
Yeah, so we don't even know who's
and I
going to get
know-
it. So, I mean,
Okay.
the manufacturer of the actual equipment might be from, who knows, Connecticut. But
Yeah.
in terms of who's actually installing it for us, it could be somebody, up the street. We don't know yet until the bids come in.
It's not the purchase of the equipment, it's the installation
Yeah.
Correct.
and outfitting of the car.
That's what I'm talking about.
I
know
think the maintenance of it,
Yeah.
once, if there's an issue, I guess there is a warranty. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I just
But we
didn't
don't
know
even
what the
who's-
time frame
Yeah,
you're looking at.
We don't even know who's got the bid yet, so we can't, it's sort of premature to really speculate on terms of.
Which I
that
know
was the
one of our
problem.
cars got ruined the other night, correct?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
totaled,
so-
I think, correct? Is it totaled, Mr. Gray?
Now, we had the insurance adjuster out here today. He is doing his assessment. We should have an answer tomorrow.
Okay.
I would think it's totaled. To see the pictures, if you saw the pictures in the paper,
I didn't even see the pictures, but I heard about
to go
the-
out back and see it in person is quite scary.
Yeah.
What happened to that car?
I would imagine it would be totaled.
I would
If it
imagine.
has more than 80,000 or 50,000 miles on it. I don't even know what it has on it, but
It's a relatively
Even
new-
if it's brand new,
50?
I think it would be totaled.
Okay.
The condition of it, looking at it.
Okay. Second issue was, and I brought this up before, and I know maybe you have other reasons, but the tasers that these guys have, you guys have 8 or 9. I still don't know why every police officer isn't issued a taser.
I actually talked to Chief Wilcox about that several months ago. He said, quite frankly, it's unnecessary. We have.
I know
each
he has
officer-
said that, and I know he's in a position
We
where
have- we
he's trying to
have-
limit his expenses,
But we have, basically, if we have a certain number of officers on shift, every officer has a taser, and they're extras in case any of them are down. So
yeah,
it's not really.
I just feel it's like sharing a gun. You may take care of your gun, the other guy might not take care of his gun. It's like it's rotating this plastic piece of equipment around 70 guys. You know, it's just I see spend $200,000 on play equipment and given all of our officers 7 tasers to share.
Oh,
and I just
we've spent quite a lot of money on the police department.
I know the police department gets a large chunk of the money, but it's a necessity and it's mostly payroll. But all I'm saying is for the investment in that, to have each one of them have their own and not have to buy their own holsters for their tasers and all that stuff. There's just things like that that I feel are common sense. Give each individual their own weapon to take care of and their own taser to take care of. And, you know, if I take something from you and use it, I don't know what you did to it. I don't know if you broke it. By the time they pulled out to use it and it's broken.
Well, I think obviously they'd be inspecting it before they take it out in the field with them.
It's sort of hard to know if it's going to work, though. I mean,
Well, do you want to volunteer to test?
I will volunteer if you do. I'll take a shot if you do, Mr. Harvey. But
no, thanks.
I just something I wanted to mention because it's most departments do buy all their own guys their own tasers, and I just think we have the money to do it. I think it makes sense. And
all right, that's fine. I mean, like I said, I've had the conversation with the chief, and he doesn't really think it's necessary at this point. To maybe at some point in the future, but he doesn't really think it's necessary at this point. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, since we were on the subject of the police department and we have an officer that's been seriously injured, I'd like to ask the public if they would take the time to send a get well card to Officer Moratti. Is it M-O-R-A-T-T-I?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say. I mean, he was injured, obviously, seriously. Might, you know, I don't want not to belittle his injury, but we don't want people thinking that
Well,
you know,
any injury serious as far as I'm concerned, and when it happens to one of our police
we know
officers.
he's going to be fine, and thank God, obviously, looking at the vehicle that, you know, that he...
You don't need to filibuster about it. It's a suggestion that I think the public is kind-hearted enough that they'll do it.
That's fine. Okay, next name on the list, Mrs. Kozlowski, is yours. If you're going to speak, just a reminder that you're not shielded by the laws.
I don't need you to give me legal advice. What do you pay him for? And don't ever presume to give me legal advice. I think you're stupid.
Yes, thank you.
Now, and don't do it again, because I'll call you stupid every time. And I don't like to be unladylike, but you filibuster about everything. So silence. It's my turn to speak.
You have 5 minutes.
No, you gave other people more than that, but I don't need more than 5 minutes. As a matter of fact, I shouldn't even be here. I have a brother who was ordained at the Vatican, and he is in a Pittsburgh hospital, not expected to live. But I'm here because the evil-minded people can't tolerate someone taking time off for a valid reason. But I may not be here at the next meeting. Now, I do want to share with the people of Falls Township who have written to me and contacted me over the past week. I went out to get a prescription filled yesterday, and I had husband and wife teams while I was out and about. They were actually crying because they thought I was not going to be a public official anymore. I hope from their lips to God's ears, but I promised that I would come back and I would do something about our atrocious school taxes. They waste money over there just like we do here. I get reams and reams and reams of paper about nothing. And when we have something as serious as this water tower happening, nobody gets the right experts in to say how to do it right. We can't get our bid proceedings right. And I want to announce that I definitely am not leaving public life. This came from a very prominent man who wrote to me today, and he said that it is the 60th anniversary for Fairless Hills. I still own the house that John and I bought as bride and groom. But he said, thank you so very much for all that you have done for the Lower Bucks residents. Hope this letter finds you ready for your new adventure in Florida. People, I don't know where they got the idea that I'm not running for office, because I am running for school board, as I promised to do last November. And I guarantee you that it's a thankless job, but I'm ready to do it with vigor. And I can tell you that we will win if people don't do what they did when Harvey ran. We had 22,976 registered voters in Falls Township, and only 3,737 came out to vote. Now, that is outrageous. And if that should happen again this primary on May 17th, if you don't get out and vote, and your interest in your school district, the children and the taxpayers who are paying these atrocious taxes aren't important to you, stay home like you did when Harvey ran. You ask me how we got him. Nobody that talks to me says they like him, and they are outraged. And then I say, well, 22,000 registered voters in Falls, 19,000 didn't vote in the primary, only 3,737. This is the most important election we are ever going to have in Falls Township. If God smiles on me, I won't win, and I will go to Florida happily. Even in my tornado-damaged house, I'll fix it. But I can tell you that I'm ready to stay here and show you where all that money is going in the school district. And I will write a newsletter if God's willing. But I'll tell you right now, you have a dismal showing. Don't wait till November, because the election is not won in November. It is won or lost on May 17th this year. And there are 3 school board seats up here in Region 2. And that's Fairless Hills and Levittown, this side of Route 1. Route 1's the divider. We have about 4 precincts over on the other side that's Falls Township, and there's only 1 seat coming up there. So the key to this election for the school board are those 3 seats in Region 2, and one of them is the seat held by Wayne de Blasio, and I don't know what Judge Mellon is doing, because I did that deposition on March the 3rd, and it wasn't even necessary to depose me. They're buying time. They're getting ready to hire a new superintendent over there, and I can tell you that's a scary thing to me. So we need to get this, the facts out, and you'll read, this is the silly season, and they lie about everything. And I'm referring to that corrupt Democratic club that I have battled. I'm a registered Democrat, but I call myself a Republican because I represent all of the people. And I'm willing to fight for your children and you taxpayers if you get out and vote. And if you don't, I'll wave goodbye on my way to Florida. Thank you.
Okay, those are all the names we have on the list. Any other speakers? Mrs. Jones?
If I may be
Hi, good evening,
excused,
Madeline.
I'm going home. Excuse me, Madeline. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I've got to find out how my brother is. I just found out before I came to the meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Jones.
Madeline Jones, Falls Township, good evening. I rode by Falls Township Water Authority coming up, got off Superhighway Route 1, came this way, and every time I pass, I wonder why we do not have a Stars and Stripes, our country's flag, flying, you know, on the grounds. So I don't know how that's done at this point in time, but I just wanted to bring that to our attention. And, you know, and what's the procedure for doing that? And also, I'm concerned, since Tyburn Road's been closed, I've been fortunate or not fortunate to travel 13 to get on Route 1 to get over to Morrisville, to cross those lanes to get into Morrisville. Ever since the lanes, you know, have been adjusted in front of Jonathan Snipes' property, you know, going in the other direction and in this direction, it's a hazard. It's like suicide. You know, sometimes they'll stop at the stop sign of the ramp going, you know, over into Morrisville, coming off the main highway, but the highway is actually 2 lanes, and in that area at 13, it becomes 3 lanes where the ramps come down. And then after that, it's almost 4 lanes. And there's a white cross there, and I know there's been more accidents. Okay, I don't know how deadly they've been, but there are times, you know, I travel 5, 6, 7 days a week, different times of the day, and it's almost suicide to even take that route. And I think I spoke with someone years ago about getting a big sign, dangerous zone or something, you know, just to make, I think they've had it years ago down on the boulevard. And again, in the opposite direction, coming out of Morrisville, all those ramps. So I don't know if we can work with PennDOT or our police officers, but something's got to be done. The speeding, I don't know how we tolerate it. And I appreciate in the newsletter again about the speeding and obeying the laws, the laws of the road, you know, in our communities. But we have not only our own residents, you know, using our community roads and the state and county roads, but we have everybody else. The business, the trash trucks. I'm tired of having nobody stop at stop signs. I don't care what type of vehicle it is. You know, stop is S-T-O-P, 4 wheels stop. It's not a drive-by. And it's not floating by. And yes, once in a while, things happen at an intersection with a traffic light or a stop sign, but you still have to do the best you can. You got to stop and then proceed, whatever the situation is. Okay? And also at Oxford Valley Road, and where, I can't think, not Commerce, that's a whole nother thing, across from Aria Hospital, if you want to make a left into Oxford Valley Road, or you come out at different traffic, heavy traffic times, they block the highway, especially coming off 95 down into Oxford Valley Road, you know, to Route 1. They literally block the highway. And there's a few other things, but briefly, I know it's late. Again, it's getting nice weather, and college students from different schools, I'm sure, are out with their buckets collecting for whatever, you know, fundraising. Sometimes it's Friday, sometimes it's Saturday and Sunday. So again, it's been talked about, and from what I understand, it's not really approved for anybody to be out there. I don't know if you have to have a permit or not, but it's dangerous. And one last thing, I am tired, it's late. Spring, okay, I hope that everyone will take the time to get out, to enjoy the flowers, the trees budding more, the daffodils, the violets, and, you know, vegetables that are already planted in places. Put the cell phones away. Put the texting away. Don't even carry them. Leave them home for a day and get out and enjoy the quiet and beauty of whether, again, you call it the environment or God's creation. And I bought the trash can up because I had a cough drop. And let's not, you know, again, let's be responsible for ourselves, every single one of us. Okay, we have to take our own responsibility, whether we're at home, in someone else's property, or out in public places. We have to put our trash in the proper place. That's why I put the trash can up, to remind us all, including myself. I think that's all. I may have forgotten something, but thank you.
All right, thank you. Just the one thing I can comment on, just in terms of the TOFA building, I know they're doing restoration work, doing a lot of work on it. I believe the flagpole just is something they haven't had installed yet because they're working on the building and everything else. But
Right.
they're going to have one. It's just that they're doing a lot of renovations on the building. and
To
it's
me, the
just-
flagpole should be number one.
Well,
before the building's even put.
I think they were
rested.
worried about the interior of the building first with the workers, making sure it was,
No,
that was part was good.
I
but-
understand. Thanks for that.
Okay, all right. All right. Move on to our next agenda item, which is the minutes. Minutes we have presented for us here, March 15th, 2011. Mr. Zupka, you were absent from this meeting. I'm assuming that you'll abstain just because your absence, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So for the Mr. Snipes, Mr. Dents, comments or questions regarding the minutes?
None, Mr. Chairman. Excellent minutes once again, Mrs. Pullen.
Okay.
No questions or comments, thank you.
No, yes, very good minutes as usual, Mrs. Pullen. You've earned your pay. Yeah. All right, is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain, one abstention. Okay. So it moves us to the manager comment. Mr. Gray?
Yes, just a few items tonight. First item in a letter from Thomas Hecker dated March 25th, Representing Viking Associates, Woolston Way, is requesting an extension of time on that project until June 30th, 2011. The board is asked to consider this extension.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the letter of extension to June 30th for Woolston Way Viking Associates?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Just a few announcements from the Park and Rec Department. The annual Easter egg hunt will be held on Saturday, August 16th at the Falls Township Community Park.
August?
April, did I say August?
You
I'm
said
sorry.
August.
April 16th. at
Mr.
the
Bunny's
Falls-
going to be in Florida, maybe?
At the Falls Township Community Park near Phase 1 Pavilion, starting at 1 p.m. This event is for children ages 2 to 10 years old and is a free event. The annual Breakfast with the Bunny event will be held on Saturday, April 23rd on the grounds of Three Arches from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. This is a free event for families with children ages 2 to 10 years old. The Park and Recs Department continue to accept summer camp registrations and Pinewood Pool membership applications. If anyone has any questions regarding any Park and Rec matters, please call 215-949-9000, extension 220. Also, I just want to announce that Air Products Mylars are ready for signature, and I have one item from Mr. Clark.
Okay.
Board members, as you're aware, for the last maybe year, we have been talking with Tullytown regarding the boundary line issue that affects the landfill. The original boundary line to determine where was Tullytown and where was Falls has disappeared over the years. Tullytown's engineer reviewed the information and came up with a conclusion. Mr. Sullivan reviewed the information and came up with a conclusion, and those conclusions were not in agreement. But what Mr. Sullivan and the Tullytown engineer were able to agree on is the method by which we can determine where the boundary line is. So Mr. Sullivan and the Tullytown engineer have agreed upon a process by which they will determine where the boundary line is. It will cost $12,000. There is discussions between Tullytown solicitor and myself. Obviously, the idea would be that we would split the cost of determining the boundary line. There was one additional issue. As you may recall, Tullytown approved this at their meeting in March. We did not, because we had another issue we needed to work out. And that is the issue that if the boundary line moves and there is a determination that we were getting paid for trash that was going into Tullytown, or if Tullytown was getting paid for trash that was coming into Falls, then obviously there would be an accounting that would need to be done to determine that amount and a credit that would be due. The one issue that we needed to just work out has been resolved, and that is, even after the boundary line is determined, even if it is determined that either of the municipalities received more money in tipping fees than they should have, there will be no reimbursement from either township to the other township. It'll simply be done in the form of an adjustment for additional tipping fees moving forward. So there won't be a need for us to write Tullytown a check. There won't be a need for Tullytown to write us a check. It'll just be an agreement with Waste Management, and they've agreed to do this, simply adjusting the money moving forward to address that credit. So with that, I would ask that you approve the expenditure of $6,000 for engineering services to determine the boundary line between Tullytown and Falls Township.
Okay, comments or questions from Mr. Clark regarding this matter? Mr. Zupka?
Yeah, I don't know if this is definitely from Mr. Clark or from Mr. Sullivan. How the heck can two engineers not be able to figure out where the boundary line is? I don't mean that to be sarcastic, but I mean aerial photographs or things.
The road, Mr. Zupka, that originally was the sort of the monument that we use to determine where the boundary line is.
Mm-hmm.
The road has essentially moved over the years. It's not where it originally was, and I think actually part of the road is gone.
It was buried by the landfill.
Yeah. So the one monument we were using to determine
Well, isn't this something with the monuments down further, up further? They basically take what do you call it? The guy with the
Using a surveyor.
Yeah, the surveyor. I'm sorry, it's a surveyor. I mean, can't they start like 5 miles away and they work down with, the surveyor or the GPS today? I mean, even the handheld GPS. You put the information, you walk down, and I can see if the landfill now has encroached over. But how the heck did that happen?
There have been several surveys done over the years, and they have different conclusions. Municipal boundaries are things that are not necessarily cast in concrete, as we say. We've agreed that Scotts Landing Road, as it existed in either 1939 or 1951, is the municipal boundary between Falls and Tullytown. It doesn't exist anymore. So we have to take an old photograph, find structures and features that existed in 1951 or 39 that still exist today, locate those by survey and aerial photograph, and then take that information and put it on a plan today to show where the boundary is today.
All right. In a 40-hour work week, even if you charged, and the other engineer charged $1,000 an hour, but a 40-hour work week, you can't get the photographs, overlay them, and...
It's the aircraft, I think.
No, it's you have to do a
Google
ground
Maps
survey.
or whatever.
You have to do a ground survey and set targets, and then have to take an aerial photograph. And then what's something called orthorectify, which is
What
to
was
take
that?
orthorectify. You take the picture's taken at an angle, you have to put it in a 2-degree plane and put it on a plan. And it's complicated. I'm not a surveyor, so I mean, I'm not necessarily in disagreement with you, but that's what it takes.
Okay. I just... I guess I'm trying not to be sarcastic or laugh about this. Just seems absolutely ridiculous. But
Mr. Zupka, we have been discussing this with Tullytown.
Oh, I know, it's been
the better
going-
part of over a year. We are not driving this. This is not our issue. We believe that this is the best way to avoid litigation. This is the best way to avoid getting sued. This is the quickest way to resolve this matter.
who is Tullytown?
It has not been threatened.
No,
by
I'm
the-
not saying that
Yeah,
they have, but you brought the term up, so I just...
But they're trying, their council wants to determine where the boundary is. So, we've been discussing it for well over a year. It went away for a little while, then it came back, and then it went away again, and then it came back, and it doesn't seem as if it's going to go away this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Snipes, comments or questions?
Yes, on that line, I never have actually asked this question before, but is the boundary of a township described by meets and bounds? Is it by tradition that we know that a road is sort of the boundary of Falls Township or any other township, or is this actually done by survey and meets and bounds and it's actually recorded somewhere? And
Most municipal boundaries are not done by meets and bounds.
they're just
When this is done, I
traditional.
believe we're going to have a meets and bounds description of our boundary between Falls and Tullytown. You usually have to go back to historical records and look at maps from many, many years ago to try to find them. A lot of surveys in the old days start at the big rock.
Right.
Or the nail in the tree.
The pine tree.
And things like that change over time.
I mean, we can be fairly sure of our river boundary here, that the river may shift, but it's always there.
That's
But,
always New Jersey on the other side, that's
yeah,
correct.
as far as we know.
Right.
But the other boundaries of our township, so we'll end up with something concrete.
At least
for a
between
small
Falls and
portion
Tullytown.
of our boundary of the township.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Dents?
No, all my questions have been answered.
Yep, I don't have any questions either. All right, is there a motion then to expend $6,000 for the purpose of rectifying the border dispute between Falls and Tullytown?
Just, so we're spending 6,
They're
Tullytown's
spending six, right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, so moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Zupka?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes.
That's all I have, thank
That's all
you.
I have. All right, board comment, then we'll go to Mr. Dents. Want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm going to comment on the water tower. When Lower Bucks Joint Municipal started taking down the tower, as it's been talked about many times in this meeting, they got the permits they needed, they did everything right except for their process by which they took the tower down and the way they handled the tower coming down and the problems. As soon as we found out that there was a problem as big as it was, we did everything that we could possibly do to fix it, to shut it down until they came up with a better procedure. They did provide MSDS sheets as far as we knew, and as far as our solicitor knew and engineer knew, of everything that was in the tower. They came up with a plan that was acceptable to take the tower down. There's not a whole lot else we can do. We're going to look at it again, obviously. We'll have people there watching the tower come down and do whatever's best for the residents of Falls Township as best as we can. And hopefully we can get the thing down as soon as possible and it's over with in a safe way. I know it's late. Other than that, as I said last month or last meeting, the weather's getting nice again. It's getting warmer out. Be careful driving around. There's people still walking in the streets instead of sidewalks. There's kids playing in the streets. So just be careful as you drive around at night. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Snipes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Back to the issue of the water tower. In terms of the agreement or the requirements for the taking down of the tower, it is not a requirement for the tower to be tarped in the air. That's not, it's not regulation or
I think the
requirement.
permit specifically says it has to be taken down in a safe manner, and that obviously leaves it open for interpretation, but it doesn't specifically say towers must be tarped. No, it does not say that.
And nobody like DEP or anybody else has any kind of
No, I don't believe
prescription
so.
of how this has to
Mr.
be
Sullivan,
done?
is any of you aware of? Nothing that specific?
No, nothing that specific, no, sir.
The gentleman that we're here tonight made a good point that even if they're taking it down in big chunks so that all that cutting doesn't have to happen, there's still some cutting obviously needs to happen, and there's going to be some, how could there not be some metal fragments or dust? So I guess our only answer to that is they're not going to do it on a heavily windy day. I mean, obviously we've got competing interests. One is everybody, I think, wants to see the tower down. At this point, it's an eyesore. So how it's done with least damage, and I don't know where the residents' concerns about the cleanup of their property come in. Who's responsible for that? Is it
Lower Bucks Joint is responsible
Lower Bucks Joint
for that.
is responsible
Yes.
for that.
They were already giving us direction as to contacting their insurance company
Okay.
for cleaning up people's backyards.
Okay. So, and is that our responsibility? Obviously, it's the homeowner can do that, but I'd like to see us be of assistance, obviously, and help them.
Well, I mean, essentially, I think, and Mr. Clark is away for a second here, but I believe it essentially is there are two parties. There's the party who's been damaged, and there's the party who's doing the damaging. We're really outside, so we can obviously serve as, assisting, but, it's no different really than, if there's some kind of automobile accident between you and someone else, the issue is between the two of you. Somebody hit you, they damaged your car, you now have to go after them. And Mr. Kenner, I feel, obviously feel bad for him. I thought, I appreciate his comments, but like he said, there were times when Lower Bucks Joint did things with that tower that negatively affected his property, and he didn't take any steps along those lines of having them pay for a new pool or fix his siding, that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know if Mr. Clark can talk at all about Mr. Snipes' question about damage done to people's property by taking down the tower. What role do we have in making sure that Lower Bucks Joint complies with their promise to sort of, fix anything wrong, go to their insurance company and have it repaired, cleaned up, et cetera?
Well, what we have done is we have discussed this matter with Lower Bucks Joint, and they have advised that anyone who has a claim for damage to their property or for any physical damage that somebody feels they have suffered, any personal injury, that they need to make a claim to Lower Bucks Joint. Lower Bucks Joint will then refer that to their insurance company and then also refer it to the contractor's insurance company. That's why the contractor has to have it. It is similar to if someone in our road program, if one of the contractors damaged some property of a third party. Ultimately, it would have to go to their insurance carrier. So all that we can do is, again, encourage the individuals who feel that they have been damaged is to contact Lower Bucks Joint and to make a claim. It's the same thing that happens here anytime Mr. Gray receives notice that someone is making a claim against us. We immediately report it to our insurance carrier, and then the insurance carrier takes over, and that's what these individuals need to do.
So, am I right in understanding that when the finishing of taking down the tower begins, we are going to have township staff on hand during that entire process, or just monitoring every now and then? But
during the entire process,
as well as with someone from Mr. Sullivan's staff.
Right. So there's one piece in here that seems there's really no answer to, which is that as they begin to take this tower down, whatever fragments, dust, metal, whatever from the cutting has got to come down. It's got to come down somewhere.
Right.
And it seems like there isn't any guarantee coming from anybody that it's not going to blow onto folks' properties, or how people are protected from that.
Mr. Snipes, I don't always do this, but I sometimes say things that I wish I hadn't said. But Mr. Kenner indicated that he was not happy that I said the word that debris had only gone onto the property at one time. And that is information I received from various sources. But I chose my word very carefully when I used the word debris, because all indications we had were that there was only one day when debris, pieces of metal or these other things, were flying onto the other properties. There is no doubt that on certain days, dust, because depending on what the wind was, that dust was going into these neighboring properties. But I would submit to you that on a windy day, if your next door neighbor is sanding his garage doors, dust is getting onto your property, or if someone is working on some other piece of equipment, dust is getting onto your property. What we were most concerned with was making sure that any of that dust that was becoming airborne, that it was not hazardous. Now, Mr. Sullivan has reviewed the MSDS sheets. DEP has reviewed what is in the tank, and actually OSHA, in the information we received tonight, reviewed this for lead. If there was, and Mr. Harvey made the point, and it's a good point, these things exist around us at all times, but these agencies, EPA and DEP and OSHA, have come up with what they call acceptable levels. And everyone who has reviewed this tank has said there may be some lead on there, but it's at an acceptable level, and it is not harmful. There are instances when lead is so prevalent on a tank that it needs to be completely enclosed when it's being taken down, but neither DEP, OSHA, or determined that was the case here. We've heard stories of magnesium, and we were told at a previous meeting about cadmium, which is a highly toxic chemical, but there's no evidence that any of that is prevalent on this tank. The torches are using propane and oxygen. The tank does not seem to have any toxic materials on it. Does it have some materials that could be hazardous? Yes, at certain levels, but those levels aren't present. We would not have allowed them to move forward with taking this down if we were not comfortable, if we were not confident that there was no hazardous toxic material on this tank. And we have done it, we think, in the best way we can to ensure that it comes down in a safe manner. And we're going to have inspectors out there every moment that they're working on this. Anything that happens, we can just shut them down. And it's the reason we've left the court case open. And we're going to leave the court case open, and we can enforce that to stop them if they don't comply with what we've said.
I'm really glad that we're going to have our staff on site, so that, and I hope homeowners in the area know that they can immediately go to those staff and say, we've seen something, we've noticed something. For the homeowners who feel like their property is like was it Mr. Kenner, I was going to say Mr. Russell. Mr. Kenner was saying that he sees a sparkly sheen on his grass, which he thinks is the fragments or whatever. Does he know? I mean, obviously he's not here anymore, but does he know who he should be speaking to? A homeowner who feels like he or she has been damaged in some way. Do they already know who they're supposed to be speaking to for a claim or a cleanup or whatever it might be?
As a matter of fact, he mentioned the gentleman's name tonight, the person who's the executive director, I believe it's his name. Is that his name? Executive director or Mr. From...
VJ Rajput?
Yeah, from...
he's the engineering manager.
Engineering manager for Lower Bucks Joint. He's the one really responsible for the project, and he's the one who should be contacted. And he said he's spoken to him, and essentially, I'm not, obviously we'd hope that they would move fast, but we don't really have any authority to sort of force Lower Bucks Joint to move fast. So in terms of cleanup.
Right.
So.
And both of the gentlemen who were here this evening indicated that they had watched the tape from the prior meeting where I spoke, and during that meeting, I did make it clear that if you believe you have a claim, you should report it to Lower Bucks Joint. You should make a claim. And in fact, in some of the emails I exchanged with Mr. Major, I encouraged him that if he believes he has been physically injured by this, or he believes that his property has been damaged by this, he should retain the services of a lawyer and make a claim against Lower Bucks Joint. I don't know if he's done that as of yet, but I specifically told Mr. Major what to do, and Mr. Kenner indicated he had watched the tape from the last meeting where I had mentioned to do it. So.
Okay, thank you. The only other thing I have is the two announcements. One, we had the Men of Harmony here at the beginning of our meeting, which was a great experience. I just wanted to announce again that their 37th annual Fairless Follies concert will be held at Conwell Egan High School in the auditorium Saturday, April 30th at 3 p.m. Admission is $10 and children under 12 are free. And you can look them up on the web at www.themenofharmony.com. It was a great mini concert we had here tonight. It was really fun to have them here. And I hope as many people can come to the concert as possible. I know I'm going to try to. The second, I was asked by Kathy Ormond from the Levittown Fire Company number 1 to announce their basket raffle on Saturday, April 30th at their banquet facility, Colonial Hall, right there next to the fire company on Falls Tullytown Road. And it's 5 to 9, drawing at 7:30, $15 admission. And you can buy, obviously, more tickets once you're in. Tickets come with your admission price. You can buy more. And there are many different baskets, and of course it's a fundraiser for the fire company, so it's a great idea. So she asked me to announce that. For tickets, dial 215-945-4231 or 215-943-6896. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Zipka?
Thank you. Well, the lateness of the hour, I really don't have much anyway, but April is organ donor month. And if you've never thought about it, one body can probably save eight people if necessary. I've been signed up in the program for quite a while, although there's an asterisk after my name. They don't want to touch my kidneys, but everything else is functional. But it's really a good program. You can't imagine what it can do for people. I know somebody right in the area that actually has sight now in both their eyes because of the organ donor program. And you'll probably in the next couple of days see different things on TV, but they're going to show you the children that can use it. And the way I signed up for it was, you get your license renewed and you sign in the organ donor program. And I would say to consult your family first just to make sure they know. But other than that, I apologize for my throat being my voice being a little weak this evening. But everybody have a good evening, and we're looking forward to spring. Thank you. Good night.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Zipka. And good to have you back, and hopefully you'll be feeling better at the next meeting. I think a lot of comments already about the issues tonight regarding the water tower. And certainly, as you said, it's doing the best we can to make sure it's done in the safest manner possible. One of the things we'll take a look at, I know some board members have mentioned it, that our regularly scheduled meeting, which would have been the 19th, is not a day that they can make. And so we're looking possibly to move the next meeting of the Board of Supervisors instead of 2 weeks from tonight to 1 week from tonight, which would be April 12th. And looking for interest on the board in terms of doing that so that we can, well, we have to advertise it, obviously, but
Fine with me.
yeah, zoning, I think, is going to be that same night, but they're going to be upstairs, and that's not a problem for them. But looking to move the meeting, the Board of Supervisors, instead of April 19th to April 12th.
I'm going to say a possibility. I might not be able to make it the
Okay.
12th, but
All right.
but probably, more than likely, I can.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Snipes?
Yes, I
Okay.
can do it.
All right, then. So we'll make that determination. We'll make that change and have that advertised. Okay, Mr. Gray?
Yes.
On the website and the channel as well, if you don't mind. Okay, and I see the reporter's here, so she's writing it down now as we speak. All right, again, thank all the people for being here this evening and all their contributions to the meeting, and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.